Beneath the surface of China's well-known landmarks lies a hidden world, a realm of breathtaking landscapes so surreal, so otherworldly, they seem to exist outside the boundaries of time. This journey takes you deep into the heart of that forgotten world, where mist drapes over cliffside temples, rainbow-colored mountains rise from the desert, and sacred peaks whisper ancient stories to the wind. These are not the places found in travel brochures or crowded tourist guides. These are China's unreal places, remote, ethereal, and deeply alive with history, myth, and nature's raw artistry. But before we continue, subscribe to the channel and like the video. Mount Qizishan, in Gansu province, stands as a quiet marvel tucked within the arid heart of northwestern China, whispering the untold stories of time sculpted in technicolor stone. Located on the outer reaches of the Hushi Corridor, this mountain is famed not for any soaring height or snow-capped glory, but for its surreal, painterly landscapes shaped over millions of years through natural geologic artistry. The term danxia is often associated with its formations, a Chinese geological term denoting landscapes composed of red sandstone and steep cliffs. But Mount Qizi offers something beyond the standard danxia terrain. It unfolds in a kaleidoscope of rainbow hues, a living palette of earth tones, where crimson, ochre, rust, peach, and pale violet rise and fall in striated ridges and smooth mounds, each layer whispering of a different epoch in Earth's deep history. Approaching the area, one begins to feel the encroachment of the desert. The air becomes drier, the horizon seems to stretch farther, and colors begin to saturate, almost unnaturally. The mountain itself is nestled between the Lurs Plateau and the rim of the Gobi, where rain is scarce but wind is constant, carrying whispers of sand and ancient dust. Despite this, the environment does not appear lifeless. Wild grasses grow in tufts in spring, and in the wetter years, patches of green sprinkle the base of the hills, highlighting the contrast of the colorful strata with startling clarity. The colors of the mountain become most vivid after rainfall, when the water saturates the sediment layers and intensifies their hues, creating a visual experience akin to walking through a dreamscape or a landscape painting given breadth and dimension. Photographers often flock here at dawn and dusk, when the slanted light enhances every curve and color. But beyond the aesthetic is the story. The geology of Qizishan reveals millions of years of sedimentation, followed by periods of uplift, erosion, and compression. It's like slicing through a history book that predates humanity. Some layers were laid down when this part of the world was submerged under shallow seas. Others were born during periods of intense volcanic activity. Still more were formed during dry periods when wind-blown sediments blanketed the earth. Each of these periods left behind minerals and pigments that, today, manifest as the various hues that coat the landscape. The name Qizi, meaning chess piece, reflects both the irregular arrangement and varied shapes of the outcrops. Some resemble domes, others flat-topped mesas, and a few rise sharply like castle towers. It's easy to imagine an ancient celestial game in progress, with gods and spirits moving these vibrant pieces across a grand board of stone and sand. But Mount Qizi is not just a feast for the eyes or a textbook in stone. The region has cultural echoes too. Ancient Silk Road trade routes pass nearby, and travelers once traversed these lands bearing silk, spices, and secrets. Some local legends describe the hills as the remnants of a celestial battle, where fallen stars left colored streaks in the earth. There are also scattered signs of ancient nomadic life, rock art, burial mounds, and the occasional whisper of a caravan trail winding into the horizon. To locals, the mountain is not merely a geological wonder, but a site of quiet reverence, beauty, and resilience. The government has designated parts of Qizishan and its surroundings as protected areas, and slowly, ecotourism is bringing greater awareness of its wonders. Walking through its quiet valleys or gazing from its low summits reveals not only a spectacle of color but a profound silence that seems to draw out introspection from within. Unlike more commercialized attractions, Qizishan is still largely untouched by mass tourism. There are no massive gates, no cable cars, no polished stone paths. Just wind, stone, and sky. What makes Mount Qizi truly unreal is not only its palette but its unassuming nature. How a place so visually extravagant can exist in such isolation, and how millions of years of tectonic pressure and erosional artistry can give rise to a setting that feels simultaneously Martian and mythological. In the tapestry of China's hidden natural wonders, is a brightly colored thread woven with subtle grace. Mount Qizishan, nestled in the verdant interior of Hune province, stands as a vertical defiance of nature's norms. a single, narrow, and astonishingly steep rock tower that juts upward from a sea of green like a sentinel forgotten by time. It is the kind of landscape that feels more like a figment of ancient legend than a physical location, a natural monolith rising from mist-veiled forests and old rural hamlets, untouched by the urban momentum that defines much of modern China. Often referred to by locals as the Stone City Mountain, Qizishan is not only a geological anomaly, but a profound symbol of endurance, mystery, and the quiet coexistence of humanity with the raw forces of the earth. From a distance, the mountain doesn't just blend into its surroundings, it pierces them. The surrounding hills are gentle and rolling, blanketed in layers of deciduous trees and tea plantations that ripple across the landscape. But from this undulating terrain erupts the vertical stone tower of Qizishan, a near-vertical blade of dark granite or weathered sandstone that seems utterly improbable. Unlike sprawling mountain ranges or broad ridges, Qizishan appears solitary, like a sacred tooth of the earth, weathered but unbowed. The mountain's verticality has led to its frequent comparison with the famed karst towers of Zhangjiajie, also inhewn, but Qizishan is far less known and infinitely more remote. This isolation contributes to its mystique. There are no crowds, no rails, and no wide paved roads, just narrow village paths winding through rice paddies and small clusters of tiled roof houses, eventually leading into increasingly dense forest until the path climbs directly up the rock. At the base of the mountain, villages have existed for centuries, possibly longer, living in harmonious rhythm with the land. These communities are small, often consisting of no more than a few dozen families, their lives tied to the seasons, the soil, and the stone. The name Shicheng, meaning Stone City, reflects the mountain's fort-like silhouette and possibly references local legends that suggest the peak was once the home of reclusive sages or served as a natural fortress during ancient skirmishes. One of the most remarkable aspects of Qizishan is the thin thread of trail that snakes its way up the rock face, a precarious path hewn directly into the stone in places, often no more than a few feet wide, hugging the vertical slope with terrifying loyalty. Iron chains are bolted into the mountain for support in the more treacherous stretches, and daring climbers, mostly local enthusiasts or spiritual pilgrims, ascend the peak not for views alone, but for what the journey represents: discipline, perseverance, and a confrontation with fear and awe in equal measure. Fog often drapes the mountain in layers, particularly during spring and late autumn. At dawn, the tower emerges slowly from the mist like a mythical creature, its top shrouded and then revealed, evoking a powerful visual metaphor. That which is majestic and unknowable often begins hidden and then, piece by piece, is laid bare to those who are patient enough to wait. There are no modern temples perched atop Qizishan, but remnants of older spiritual sites can still be found: weathered stones carved with inscriptions, small shrines tucked into crevices, and naturally formed caves that once housed hermits or traveling monks. The mountain is not associated with any single religion, but rather serves as a spiritual landmark in a broader sense, a place where sky and stone meet, and where thoughts grow quiet. Ecologically, the area around Mount Qomolangma is home to a diversity of flora and fauna. Because of its relative inaccessibility and lack of large-scale human disturbance, the mountain's base forests are still lush with native species. Bamboo groves sway alongside ancient camphor trees, and birdsong fills the air in the early mornings. It is said that in some of the higher and more shadowed crevices, rare ferns and mosses grow, watered by dew and rain, untouched by human hands for decades. Geologists have taken interest in Qizishan not only for its singular shape but for what it reveals about the forces that have shaped southern China. The formation likely originated through tectonic upheaval, where once horizontal layers of sedimentary rock were slowly tilted upward, then subjected to millions of years of erosion, leaving only the most resilient spire behind. Over time, this monolithic remnant became what we see today, a sharp and solitary vertical tower, carved not by human ambition but by time and gravity. What makes Mount Qomolangma unreal is not just its appearance, though it is visually arresting, but its total resistance to categorization. It is not part of a grand range. It does not host a famous temple. It is not on the radar of international tourism or national campaigns. And yet it stands, stark and powerful, surrounded by forests and forgotten by the rush of modernity. It embodies something essential, an ancient resilience, a story etched not into books but into stone, rising above the trees like a question mark carved into the sky. In a country filled with spectacles and UNESCO World Heritage Sites, Qizishan is a quiet counterpoint. Subtle, profound, and deeply unreal in its stillness, its symmetry, and its steadfast watch over the forests and villages below. Mount Qomolangma, known to much of the world as Mount Everest, is not just the tallest mountain on Earth, but a colossus of spiritual, geological, and cultural magnitude. While most international climbers approach Everest from its southern face in Nepal, the Chinese side of the mountain, rising from the remote Tibetan plateau, offers a vastly different and far more stark experience. This northern approach, unfolding across sweeping glacier valleys, barren plains, and high-altitude monasteries, delivers a colder, harsher, and in many ways more surreal encounter with the world's rooftop. Here, Mount Qomolangma is not just a physical destination, but a manifestation of the divine, revered not merely for its height but for its sacred essence. The journey to the north face of Qomolangma begins far from the peak itself. One must traverse the highlands of Tibet, a landscape of superlatives, vast, windswept plains that stretch like oceans of stone, dotted with salt lakes, yaks, and whitewashed monasteries clinging to cliff edges. The air is thin even in the lowlands, and as travelers push higher toward the Everest base camp on the Chinese side, oxygen becomes precious, and every step feels like a negotiation with the sky. Unlike the southern base camp, which is reached after a multi-day trek through verdant Himalayan valleys, the northern base camp can be approached by a rugged road. Yet, this accessibility belies the rawness of what awaits. The terrain becomes increasingly severe. Rocks, wind-blasted scree, and glacier dominate the landscape, and the scale of the mountains around begins to warp all sense of proportion. Then, suddenly, Mount Qomolangma reveals itself. From the north, Everest appears not only taller, but more formidable. The infamous northeast ridge and the sheer, ice-hung north face form a triangle of icy grandeur, a face that does not invite, but rather tests the resolve of anyone daring to stand before it. It is not uncommon for the peak to remain shrouded in shifting veils of clouds, only to break through for a few fleeting minutes in the morning or late evening, its snowy summit gleaming gold in the sun. In these moments, silence falls, cameras click, yes, but mostly heart still. It is a vision that transcends words. The Chinese name, Qomolangma, translates roughly to Goddess Mother of the Earth, and in Tibetan spiritual tradition, she is considered a mountain deity of immense power. The mountain is a living being, a guardian, and a symbol of profound elemental energy. Pilgrims from across the Tibetan world visit not to climb, but to offer prayers, spinning prayer wheels, tying colorful prayer flags that flutter in the freezing wind, and walking koras, sacred clockwise circuits around holy objects or places. The base camp itself is peppered with mani stones, yak butter lamps in tiny shrines, and the deep, resonant chants of monks from nearby Rongbuk Monastery. Rongbuk Monastery, just a few kilometers from the northern base camp, is the highest monastery in the world, perched at an altitude of about 5,000 meters. It is a modest structure by Tibetan standards, but spiritually potent, weathered by wind and frost, its prayer flags and white walls standing resolute against the backdrop of the highest peaks on Earth. From its terraces, one can view Qomolangma framed in the distance, an experience as moving as any summit attempt. Founded by Nyingma Buddhist monks, Rongbuk serves both as a place of worship and a waypoint for those who seek to commune with the sacred, be they pilgrims or climbers. What sets the northern side of Everest apart from the south is not just geography but atmosphere. The Tibetan side is colder, more austere, and less commercialized. There are fewer tea houses, fewer tourists, and far less of the celebratory energy that permeates the southern camps during peak climbing season. Here, the feeling is one of deep humility. The environment offers no comfort, only clarity. The wind is constant, the temperature brutal, and the scale of everything, sky, icefall, shadow, unrelenting. And yet, in this severity lies an almost unbearable beauty. Glaciers spill down from the mountain like frozen rivers in slow motion, creaking and groaning under their own weight. The East Rongbuk Glacier, in particular, is one of the major glacial systems feeding the north face. These icy flows are riddled with seracs, ice towers and ridges that loom like ancient, crumbling cathedrals. Crevasses slash through the surface like deep blue scars, and each footstep across them, even in summer, is a gamble with gravity. Yet for those who endure, these glaciers lead into the very heart of the mountain's anatomy, revealing corridors of ancient ice and fossilized snow. At night, the stars above Qomolangma shine with an unnatural intensity. The altitude strips away the atmosphere's haze, allowing constellations to blaze like torches in the black velvet sky. And when the moon rises, Its pale light washes across the summit, making the snow gleam like silver. In such moments, it becomes impossible not to feel that one is standing in the presence of something older, purer, and far more powerful than the human world. Climbing Qomolangma from the north is also more technically demanding than the southern route. The infamous second step, a nearly vertical rock face at over 8,600 meters, is among the greatest obstacles on the route, and the winds on the north face are among the fiercest on Earth. For every triumphant summit, there are countless more who are turned back or worse. Memorials and gravestones at the edges of the base camp, silent markers to those who dared to reach beyond human limits and paid the ultimate price. Despite these dangers, or perhaps because of them, the north side of Everest continues to attract a unique breed of climbers. Those who do not seek merely to conquer the mountain but to understand it, to commune with it, to test themselves not against others, but against the sublime. In every howling gust and blinding snow squall, the mountain strips away all illusion, revealing the raw truth of mortality and ambition. What makes Mount Qomolangma's Chinese side so profoundly unreal is not just its scale, but its spirit. It is a landscape carved by wind and time into something that feels primordial, untouched by the passage of civilizations. Here, in the shadow of the goddess, humans are not masters, but guests, temporary sparks in a world of ancient ice, prayer, and stone. Mount Zhohua, or Juhuashan, rises from the gentle hills of southern Anhui like a dream coalescing from mist and devotion, an ethereal realm where the terrestrial and spiritual intermingle. As one of the four sacred mountains of Chinese Buddhism, Zhohua is not merely a geographic feature but a realm sanctified by centuries of belief, pilgrimage, and monastic life. While its name literally means 9 glorious peaks, the mountain is a sprawling massif with 99 individual peaks, many of them perpetually veiled in fog and cloud, lending the entire landscape an aura of mystery and transcendence. Zhohua is not a place to simply visit. It is a place to absorb, to breathe, and to reflect upon the vastness of the spiritual cosmos that it represents. Unlike the forbidding severity of Everest or the vertical spectacle of Qizishan, Juhuashan invites visitors into a softer, more intimate sanctity. Its slopes are green and lush, shaded by ancient pine forests and the rustling of bamboo. Winding stone stairways ascend gently through the landscape, disappearing into layers of silver fog that cling like gauze to the mountainside. Every turn of the path reveals another temple, pagoda, or crumbling shrine nestled into a cliffside or hidden among the trees. These structures, often centuries old, feel less constructed than conjured, as though they grew from the earth alongside the forests and rock. Zhohua's sacred identity stems primarily from its association with the Bodhisattva Kittigaba, Dzong Puza, known in Chinese Buddhism as the savior of souls trapped in hell and the protector of children and the underworld. It is believed that the Korean monk Kim Chao-kyu, who came to the mountain during the Tang dynasty, 8th century CE, was an incarnation of Kittigaba. After his death, his mummified body was found remarkably intact and was enshrined within the mountain, prompting a flourishing of monastic communities and devout pilgrimage that has continued ever since. There are over 90 functioning temples scattered across Juhuashan today, and each seems to exist in its own spiritual microclimate. Some perch dramatically on cliff ledges, their curved eaves silhouetted against rolling clouds. Others sit deeper within forests, half hidden by camellia. Blossoms in spring or dusted with snow in winter. Pilgrims arrive from every corner of China and beyond, bowing at incense-thick altars, circling stone stupas, and climbing toward the uppermost sanctuaries in acts of reverence and devotion that span lifetimes. The most revered sites include the Huacheng Temple, the mountain's oldest and central temple, where rituals and prayer ceremonies fill the days with the soft cadence of chants and the low peal of bronze bells. Further up lies the Qiantai Peak, one of Zhohua's highest and most isolated summits, requiring a demanding climb or cable car journey. Once atop, pilgrims find not just panoramic views of the surrounding valleys and peaks, but also a palpable stillness, wind-stirred robes, murmuring prayers, and the glint of sunrise on golden rooftops. Another critical structure is the Hall of the Body, Shunjian, which houses the preserved remains of monk Kim Chao-kyu, seated in eternal meditation. To witness this sacred relic is to confront the living spirit of the mountain, a direct link to the divine that forms the heart of Juhuashan's sacred power. Monks and laypeople alike kneel before the relic in absolute silence, their faces touched with awe and tears. The fog that graces Juhuashan is no accident of climate, it is part of its mystique, a living metaphor. Mist gathers in the valleys and clings to temple walls, obscuring the future, softening the past, and heightening the presence of the now. In these veils of vapor, the mountain feels removed from time itself, as though each step might just as easily carry one into a vision, a memory, or a myth. Poets of the Tang and Song dynasties frequently celebrated this quality, describing Qizishan as a place where clouds sleep on rooftops and silence flows like water. Biodiversity is another facet of the mountain's allure. The climate and elevation gradients allow for a rich range of plant life, from subtropical shrubs and lotus ponds at the base to moss-covered boulders and alpine herbs at higher altitudes. The air is rich with the scent of pine needles, wet stone, and incense smoke, mingling into an aromatic signature that lingers long after descent. Birds cry from unseen perches, cicadas hum through the summer heat, and the occasional deer or monkey may peer out from under the foliage, as if sentinels of a natural monastery older than any carved from stone. Monastic life here is not theatrical but deeply committed. Monks rise before dawn, their chants echoing down mountain corridors as the sun spills pale light across temple courtyards. They live modestly, surviving on alms and cultivating their food in small plots. The discipline is rigorous: scripture recitation, meditation, silent reflection, and physical labor. Some monks have taken vows of silence that stretch for decades, communicating only through hand signals or written notes, immersed in their solitary pursuit of enlightenment. Festivals bring life and rhythm to Qizishan's seasons. The Kitagaba's birthday is marked with lantern-lit processions that climb the mountain at night, casting a magical glow through the trees and fog. Candles flicker in carved niches, chants float upward like incense, and thousands of pilgrims move as one, a flowing river of devotion, light, and hope. Even outside of major holidays, Qizishan remains an active center of Buddhist learning, with visiting scholars and monks exchanging texts, teachings, and wisdom in hidden courtyards and secluded study rooms. Yet what renders Mount Qomolangma truly unreal is not only the beauty of its temples or the tranquility of its trails, it is the pervasive, nearly tangible sense of otherworldliness. It is a place that erases the boundaries between body and spirit, stone and sky, prayer and breath. Visitors often describe feeling as though they are walking through a dreamscape or a half-remembered past life. Here, the fog does not conceal but reveals, showing the outlines of truths usually hidden by the brightness of modern life. In the hush between the chants, in the echo of a gong across a valley, or in the stillness that gathers beneath the boughs of a thousand-year-old pine, Qomolangma does not shout its importance, it simply is. It offers a sanctuary not just of Buddhism, but of the human spirit, inviting all who climb its sacred slopes to leave behind the weight of the world and ascend, if only briefly, toward transcendence. Mount Qomolangma, also known as Qizishan, rises like a frozen sentinel from the dense green heart of northwestern Yunnan, not far from the fabled borders of Tibet. Its name, literally White Mang Snow Mountain, is not poetic exaggeration. This is a place where snow-laced ridges kiss the sky year-round, where icy breath clings to stone even in summer, and where silence is so profound that it presses against the skin like altitude itself. As the highest peak in the Hengduan Mountains and a critical part of the Three Parallel Rivers region, a UNESCO World Heritage and Biosphere Reserve, Mount Qomolangma is as biologically rich as it is geologically commanding. And unlike many of China's more visited peaks, Qomolangma remains wild, primal, and utterly surreal in its untouched majesty. At over 5,429 meters, 17,815 feet high, Qizishan looms above the confluence of three of Asia's great rivers: the Yangtze, Jinsho, Mekong, Lancang, and Salween, Nujiang. These rivers carve deep, dramatic gorges through the terrain, creating vertical shifts so extreme that within just a few dozen kilometers, travelers can move from tropical forest to subalpine meadows and finally to alpine tundra. This staggering range in altitude has turned the Qomolangma region into one of the world's most biodiverse hotspots. While the mountain's jagged summit remains eternally cloaked in ice and snow, its flanks descend through a kaleidoscope of ecosystems, each one teeming with unique flora and fauna. Approaching the mountain is itself a journey into the unreal. The twisting road from Shangri-La, a town whose very name evokes myth, winds through highland meadows, evergreen forests, and deep valleys cut by glacial rivers. Herds of yaks graze in the open grasslands, and Tibetan prayer flags flutter from poles on every mountain pass, lending an almost ceremonial rhythm to the drive. As the road ascends the Qomolangma Snow Mountain Pass, elevation climbs past 4,200 meters, and the world outside the window slowly transforms. Trees shrink and vanish, replaced by windswept tundra, and the air turns thin and crisp. And then the mountain appears. The summit of Baimang is a jagged crown of ice and granite, ringed by hanging glacier and steep, serrated ridges. During sunrise, the peaks blaze with pale gold light, the snow glowing as if lit from within. Glacial tongues descend into high cirques and valleys, their deep crevasses echoing with ancient cold. It's a landscape both magnificent and intimidating, beautiful in the way that only untamed nature can be, where each slope might contain 1,000 years of snowfall and where human footsteps vanish within hours. Yet for all its glacial majesty, Baimang is no lifeless wasteland. Its lower flanks support ancient forests that harbor creatures found nowhere else on Earth. Snow leopards, red pandas, and Yunnan snub-nosed monkeys, ethereal primates with pale faces and upturned noses, call this sanctuary home. Rare birds, such as the blood pheasant and the Himalayan monal, flash like gemstones through the undergrowth, while medicinal herbs used in Tibetan and Chinese medicine grow in secret groves and windswept ridges. These forests are draped in ancient rhododendrons, some reaching tree-like proportions and bursting into fiery bloom each spring. Moss clings to every trunk, and lichens spill from branches like green lace. Waterfalls pour from snowmelt high above, feeding clear streams that tumble over granite boulders and feed into sacred lakes hidden within folds of the terrain. For the people who live nearby, Tibetan herders, Nashi farmers, and others, the mountain is not only a geographical presence but a living deity. Mount Baimang is considered sacred by local Tibetans, often regarded as the spiritual protector of the region. Pilgrimages are undertaken along ancient trails that skirt the mountain's base, with pilgrims spinning prayer wheels, murmuring mantras, and prostrating themselves on stone paths in acts of devotion that can span weeks. To climb to the summit is not common, nor is it encouraged by local belief. Baimang is not a peak to be conquered, but a being to be respected. Its snowfields are seen as the robes of a guardian spirit, its glacier the breath of ancient ancestors, its mists the veil between this world and the divine. The Biosphere Reserve designation given to Qizishan by UNESCO is not merely honorary. It is an acknowledgement of the mountain's critical ecological function. As global climate change threatens alpine habitats, the mountain serves as a refuge for species pushed ever higher in search of cooler temperatures. Research stations, discreet and environmentally sensitive, are scattered at various elevations, collecting data on glacial retreat, species migration, and changing weather patterns. Scientists speak in reverent tones of the mountain, noting its resilience and fragility in the same breath. For hikers and eco-travelers, Baimang offers a different kind of experience than the more curated tourist sites of China. There are no cable cars here, no neon signs, no vendors selling bottled water at scenic overlooks. Instead, there are footpaths, some traced by hoof and paw rather than human feet, that lead into forested depths or along barren ridgelines. Trekkers often find themselves alone for hours, save for the wind, the occasional call of a lemurgeon circling overhead, or the muffled crunch of snow underfoot. In winter, the landscape transforms entirely. Snow cloaks even the lowest valleys, and the forests fall silent beneath heavy drifts. Ice crystals hang in the air, sparkling in sunlight. Avalanches thunder from the heights like distant cannon fire. It's a time when even the animals retreat into silence, and the mountain becomes a fortress of stillness and solitude. Yet even then, villagers light butter lamps in distant monasteries, sending prayers skyward through the smoke and frost. What makes Mount Baimang truly unreal is its total synthesis of contrasts. It is at once a place of brutal cold and teeming life, of spiritual sanctuary and scientific study, of isolation and interconnection. Here, the earth rises not just in altitude, but in meaning. Each fold of its terrain tells stories of deep time, of tectonic collisions and ice ages, of ancient peoples and forgotten rituals. And for those who stand beneath its towering peaks or gaze across its frozen ridges, the mountain offers not just a view, but a vision. In a country defined by history and civilization, Mount Baimang remains one of nature's last great testaments to wild beauty. It does not ask to be admired. It simply endures, silent, sacred, and sublime. Mount Naniwan, located in the gently rugged landscapes of southeastern Shaanxi province, is not a towering peak in the traditional sense, but rather a symbolically immense terrain imbued with historical resonance, revolutionary legacy, and a surprising natural beauty that has only recently emerged into the national consciousness. Where one might expect harsh battlegrounds or industrial ruins, Naniwan instead offers rolling hills draped in vibrant green terraces, wide, serene river valleys, and landscapes that have been lovingly shaped by the passage of both history and hope. The name Naniwan evokes a flood of emotions for many Chinese citizens. It is etched into the national memory not because of any towering altitude or sacred Buddhist associations, but because of its pivotal role during the Chinese Communist Revolution. In the 1940s, this remote, agrarian corner of the Lurs Plateau became a vital base for the 8th Route Army under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. Amid the wartime blockade and food shortages during the Second Sino-Japanese War, Naniwan became the experimental site for self-reliance, a revolutionary vision of survival through agrarian transformation. In 1941, under the direction of the Yangon Base, troops were sent to Naniwan to reclaim wasteland and cultivate their own food supplies. What followed was a remarkable transformation. Barren hills were sculpted into terraced fields, irrigation systems were constructed from scratch, and soldiers became farmers and laborers, all working side by side. Crops such as corn, wheat, potatoes, and even opium poppies, which were later replaced by cash crops, were grown to sustain the revolutionary base. This act of self-sufficiency became legendary, and songs like Naniwan entered the national repertoire, forever romanticizing the area as a model of hard work, collectivism, and revolutionary spirit. Today, Mount Naniwan still echoes with the past, but it has also reinvented itself as a scenic, pastoral landscape where visitors can walk through history as much as they can through nature. The mountain itself is more a series of undulating hills than a singular soaring peak. Its elevation is modest, but its influence is towering. Verdant ridges stretch into the horizon, blanketed in pine trees, wildflowers, and neatly stacked terraces that continue to support the local economy. Walking these hills, one senses layers of narrative embedded in every path, stories of hardship, grit, and transformation. The Naniwan River weaves its way through the valleys like a living ribbon of time. It reflects not only the changing seasons, the bright blossoms of spring, the golden wheat of summer, the crimson foliage of autumn, but also the shifting identities of the region. What was once a military frontier has become a place of rural renewal and ecotourism. Wooden bridges span the river at various points, leading to trails that climb toward historical sites, small shrines, and scenic viewpoints. One of the most visited and emotionally charged landmarks is the Revolutionary Memorial Hall, which documents the efforts of the soldiers who turned this rugged land into a fertile base. The hall is constructed in traditional style, with red and white walls and tiled roofs, but within its modest structure lies a comprehensive archive of letters, photographs, tools, and clothing worn by the soldiers of the time. Just outside, bronze statues depict farmers and soldiers planting seeds and drawing water, their gazes fixed resolutely toward the horizon. It is not triumphalist in tone, it is quietly reverent, portraying struggle and perseverance with dignity and grace. Adjacent to the Memorial Hall is the former site of the military reclamation farm, now preserved as a cultural park. Here, old plows, water wheels, and threshing machines are displayed in situ, providing a rare tactile connection to the tools of survival used by those who once depended on the soil for both sustenance and political future. Visitors can walk along paths once tread by revolutionary leaders and ordinary foot soldiers alike, hearing recorded narrations of personal accounts, some in the trembling voices of surviving veterans. The human history of Mount Naniwan is deeply intertwined with the land itself, and that land is now flourishing. The terraced hills, originally hacked into the Lurs with crude tools and tireless hands, now form a striking green tapestry when viewed from above. Each level tells of endurance, against hunger, against war, against the unforgiving elements. The soil here, once cracked and poor, has been revitalized through careful ecological stewardship and community farming initiatives. Orchards of apples, pears, and apricots now the slopes, and in spring, their blossoms turn the hills into a sea of pink and white petals that drift on the breeze like fragrant snow. Wildlife, too, has returned. Pheasants dart through the underbrush, and small deer are occasionally spotted in the early dawn hours. The reforestation efforts have helped stabilize the soil, reducing erosion and inviting native species back into their ancestral home. Birdsong fills the air, especially in the early morning when the rising sun gilds the hilltops and reflects off the lazy curves of the Naniwan River. Cultural festivals now punctuate the seasons, many of them reviving traditional practices that predate the revolutionary period. Harvest dances, calligraphy exhibitions, and local culinary fairs share space with historical reenactments and educational programs. In this, Naniwan has achieved something rare, a living dialogue between past and present, ideology and ecology, remembrance and rebirth. The unreal quality of Mount Naniwan lies not in its raw landscape alone, but in its extraordinary transformation. Few places on Earth wear their layered history so openly. It is a living palimpsest, where trenches have become fields, where marching songs echo over sunflower beds, and where the memory of hunger has given way to the scent of ripening fruit. Here, the revolutionary and the rural meet, not in contradiction, but in harmony. Tourists may come for the history, but they stay for the serenity. Farmers continue to till the land, now with electric tools and modern knowledge, but always with a memory of those who first turned earth with calloused hands and empty stomachs. To walk in Mount Naniwan is to walk with ghosts, not in a haunted sense, but in a reverent one. The land remembers everything, and in return for care and remembrance, it blooms. Mount Qizishan, or Qizishan, located in the southwestern corner of Anhui province, is one of China's most mesmerizing geological spectacles. A place where stone defies gravity, clouds blur the boundary between earth and sky, and ancient pine trees cling to the edge of impossible cliffs with quiet defiance. Often overshadowed in fame by nearby Huangshan, Qizishan stands apart in solitude and sublime grandeur, a mountain that whispers its legends not through crowds or grandeur but through towering granite monoliths, mist-shrouded peaks, and an atmosphere soaked in mysticism. The name Qizishan means heavenly pillar, and as soon as one lays eyes on the central granite peak, straight, solitary, and piercing the clouds like a divine spear, the origin of the name becomes strikingly clear. This iconic pillar rises over 1,400 meters, a monumental shard of granite that has drawn pilgrims, poets, philosophers, and geologists for centuries. Surrounded by other oddly shaped stone formations with evocative names like Immortal's Palm, Sleeping Buddha, and Dragon's Spine, the mountain unfolds like a myth carved in stone. These formations are not gentle hills, but sheer vertical masses, rising hundreds of meters in nearly unbroken columns, nature's own skyscrapers. The stone that forms Qizishan's dramatic topography dates back hundreds of millions of years, and what the eye sees today is the result of slow tectonic uplift, glacial sculpting, and relentless erosion. The mountain sits within a unique fault basin and is now recognized as a UNESCO Global Geopark, a title not only honoring its geological features but also the ancient fossils preserved in its rocks. Some of these fossils, dating back to the Cambrian period, include rare marine organisms once buried in the seabeds that long preceded the formation of the mountain itself. To walk through Qizishan is, in some sense, to walk on the ancient bones of life itself. But geology alone doesn't explain Qizishan's enchantment. The landscape feels alive with presence. At dawn, oceanic seas of clouds often gather around the cliffs, filling the valleys like flowing silk and leaving only the highest granite pillars piercing through. It's a scene of floating islands in a celestial sea, surreal, tranquil, and entirely unreal. During these hours, the light plays tricks on the mind. Shadows of the mountains project into the mist, forming eerie halos and shimmering outlines known as the Buddha's light, a phenomenon that ancient monks interpreted as divine visions. Pine trees, twisted by wind and time, grow directly out of the stone faces, their roots digging into microscopic cracks and clinging like gnarled fingers to life itself. These trees, many centuries old, have become an emblem of the mountain's spirit: quiet endurance, graceful resilience, and a certain aloof wisdom. The pines lean outward from the cliffs, framing viewpoints like calligraphic brushstrokes drawn by nature's own hand. Some have names and legends of their own, passed down through local lore and Buddhist texts. Temples are woven into this scenery like whispered prayers. Though fewer in number and scale compared to more famous Buddhist mountains, the temples of Qizishan exude a profound intimacy. Nestled in grottos, perched on ledges, or hidden among bamboo groves, these sanctuaries offer retreat and reflection. One of the most well-known is the Sanzu Temple, dating back to the Tang dynasty. Built in memory of a monk who achieved enlightenment on the mountain, the temple has been rebuilt multiple times over the centuries, each reconstruction preserving its essential spiritual magnetism. Within its halls, monks still chant sutras at dawn, their voices rising and falling like wind across the peaks. The Taoist tradition is also strong here. Local legends claim that Qianzhou was a retreat for immortals, who would descend upon the granite spires to meditate and refine elixirs in secret. According to folklore, the immortals' palm rock formation is said to be the print left behind by a deity who grasped the cliff to leap toward the heavens. These tales are not taken as literal history, but rather as part of the mountain's living mythology, a shared language between humans and stone, between the fleeting and the eternal. Qianzhou's trails, winding, steep, and poetic, offer both challenge and serenity. Stone steps lead from the mountain's base, where tea fields and bamboo forests blanket the slopes, up through layers of elevation that seem to unfold in thematic acts. First come the forests, alive with birdsong and the rustle of squirrels. Then the cliffs, where stairways cling to narrow ledges and rope bridges span dramatic drops. Finally, the high ridges, where winds whistle through lonely pine groves and views extend across the province in every direction. Despite its accessibility, only a few hours from Anqing or Wuhan by train, Qianzhou retains a sense of wilderness. There are no crowds jostling for selfies here. Even at popular viewpoints, silence prevails, broken only by wind and the occasional shout echoing across the chasms. On misty days, which are frequent, the mountain feels wholly suspended from the world, like a realm that exists not in physical geography but in the architecture of dreams. Ecologically, the mountain is home to dozens of rare plant and animal species. Medicinal herbs grow in shaded groves, and endangered birds such as the golden pheasant flash across clearings. Conservation efforts have helped to restore and protect habitats around the mountain, including cloud forests and alpine meadows, making Qianzhou a haven not just for pilgrims and poets, but for life itself. But perhaps the most unreal aspect of Qianzhou is its emotional impact. Many visitors report a strange calm descending upon them as they ascend the cliffs, as if the mountain itself exerts a gravitational pull not on the body, but on the mind. Worries seem smaller when standing beneath a 1,000-foot granite tower. The ticking of time slows when you see pine branches disappear into swirling mist. And every view seems designed not merely for sightseeing, but for revelation. Qianzhou is not loud in its fame. It does not clamor for attention with flashing lights or tourist spectacles. Instead, it waits, silent, stoic, and immense. It offers a world shaped not by kings or dynasties, but by wind, water, and patience. In doing so, it reveals something that many seek but few find, a moment of clarity in a landscape sculpted by eternity. Mount Qomolangma, resting quietly in the northeastern reaches of Jiangxi province, is not a place of thunderous acclaim or garish spectacle. Instead, it is a mountain of whispers, of soft winds through old bamboo, of chanting monks hidden behind temple walls, of footsteps echoing through corridors of ancient inscriptions carved deep into stone. Known more intimately than grandly, Mount Qomolangma carries the weight of centuries not with brute majesty, but with refined serenity, a landscape that breathes philosophy and introspection into those who dare to walk its mist-laced trails. At first glance, Yangmingshan's terrain may appear gentle compared to China's more famous vertical ranges. But its beauty lies in the way earth, forest, and cloud blend into each other with seamless grace. Low rolling peaks stretch across the horizon like brushstrokes on rice paper, their silhouettes softened by the ever-present mist that clings to the foliage. This fog is not just atmospheric, it is elemental to the mountain's character. It veils the paths, revealing scenes in fragments, an arched stone bridge here, a crumbling pagoda there, like a story being told not all at once, but slowly, with pauses meant for reflection. One of Yangmingshan's most distinguishing features is its long association with Buddhism. Dating back over a millennium, the mountain was chosen by monks as a place of retreat, away from worldly noise, where spiritual cultivation could unfold in undisturbed harmony with nature. The Buddhist presence here is subtle yet deep. Unlike the grand, multi-tiered temples that crowd mountains like Amei or Wutai, Yangming's temples are more discreet, often half-hidden within pine and bamboo groves, with stone paths leading to moss-covered prayer halls and lanterns long-grown green with lichen. One of the oldest and most revered of these is the Chongqing Temple, nestled into a hillside where bamboo rustles continuously like a living choir. The temple's layout is intimate, shaped more by the contours of the land than by any rigid architectural plan. Its courtyards are shaded, its rooftops often blanketed by fallen leaves, and incense wafts gently from altars where silent monks recite ancient sutras. In the early morning, when the mountain is still wrapped in shadow and dew, one might hear only the steady tap of a monk's wooden staff echoing down the stone corridors, a sound that feels like time itself marking its steps. But Buddhism is not the only philosophy etched into Yangming soil. The mountain also carries the intellectual legacy of Wang Yangming, the Ming dynasty philosopher after whom the mountain is named. Wang was one of the most influential Confucian scholars of his era, a thinker who challenged rigid orthodoxy and emphasized the unity of knowledge and action, insisting that moral insight must come from within. He spent time in this very region, reflecting on the harmony between human ethics and nature. To this day, scholars and students of philosophy visit Yangmingshan not just to hike, but to meditate, hoping to touch, even faintly, the clarity Wang once described in his writings. Many of the stone inscriptions found throughout the mountain's trails pay tribute to Wang Yangming's teachings. These calligraphic carvings are not ornamental, they are philosophical landmarks. Words from classic Confucian texts, poems, and aphorisms appear carved into cliffsides, staircases, and even boulders along riversides. Some are faded, half consumed by moss and time, their characters softened by rain and mist. Others remain sharp and assertive, like silent declarations carved into the bone of the world. Walking the paths of Yangmingshan is like entering a living library, one not made of paper, but of stone, echo, and forest. Ecologically, Mount Yangming remains a hidden haven. The climate here is moist and temperate, creating ideal conditions for biodiversity to flourish. Ferns line the paths, bamboo forests sway on the slopes, and rare medicinal plants sprout in shaded gullies. The forest floor is a carpet of moss and fallen pine needles, interrupted occasionally by the burst of color from a camellia bloom or a rare orchid species. The air is thick with the scent of earth and green growth, an atmosphere that encourages slow breathing, slow walking, slow thinking. Animal life, too, finds refuge here. Local birds, especially the melodious womai, fill the canopies with song, while squirrels and masked civets dart through underbrush. The mountain's lesser-known status in the tourism circuit has helped preserve its habitats, and efforts in recent years by provincial authorities have focused on ecological conservation over aggressive development. As a result, the mountain feels less like a destination and more like a preserved time capsule, a place where the pace of life reverts to a gentler rhythm. The mountain's hiking routes are many, but all share a similar character: they are contemplative. Unlike more vertical ranges that test one's legs and lungs with brute altitude, Yangming challenges the mind and spirit. Trails often lead through forests so dense with fog and trees that one feels wrapped in introspection. Stone steps, sometimes uneven or cracked with age, rise and fall in gentle undulations, guiding travelers past tea houses, shrines, waterfalls, and caves. One popular route leads to the Xingjing platform, a highland meadow where clouds gather and dissipate in pulses, offering fleeting panoramic views that feel like gifts rather than guarantees. In spring and early summer, Yangmingshan becomes a living canvas. The mist interacts with sunlight in unpredictable ways, casting shafts of golden light through the leaves. Morning dew clings to cobwebs strung between tree branches like strings of pearls. In these moments, it's easy to understand why so many monks and scholars chose this place to isolate themselves from the world. It is not isolation born of rejection, but of deeper connection, a desire to step away so that one might see more clearly. In autumn, the mountain dons a quieter palette: gold, russet, amber. The green of summer fades into soft browns, and the mountain feels like it is in meditation itself, drawing inward for the long sleep of winter. During this season, footfall on the trails becomes rarer, and those who make the climb are often rewarded with a deeper solitude. The stillness seems to amplify every sound: the rustle of leaves, the call of a crow, the splash of water from a hidden stream. Yangmingshan does not dazzle, it lingers. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it through gentleness, philosophy, and patience. It is a mountain not of the senses, but of the spirit. A place where every trail is a sentence, every inscription a paragraph, and every overlook a chapter in a story that is still being written. For those who seek not the clamor of the crowd but the murmur of meaning, Yangmingshan remains an unreal place, not because it is otherworldly, but because it feels like a forgotten part of this world returned to life. Mount Qomolangma, rising from the rugged terrain of Shaanxi province, is a mountain steeped not only in the beauty of natural formations but also in the power of history, reverence, and myth. Known alternately as Guandishan or Mount of the Emperor Guan, this sacred mountain is not merely a geological presence, it is a spiritual and cultural monolith tied inseparably to the figure of Guan Yu, the revered general of the Three Kingdoms era who was later deified and worshipped as the god of war, loyalty, and righteousness. In the folds of its cliffs, forests, and temples, Mount Guandi whispers legends from China's past and remains an enduring symbol of moral strength. Located near the boundary of Shaanxi and Shaanxi provinces, Qizishan is part of the LVNG Mountains, a lesser-known range that forms a highland spine through the Lurs Plateau. Though it may not possess the vertical drama of Tibet or the cloud seas of Huangshan, it presents a quieter majesty, a series of peaks and ridges covered in dense pine forests, granite outcrops, and gorges where the wind howls in winter like the ghosts of ancient warriors. The mountain reaches an elevation of about 2,300 meters, making it one of the highest points in western Shaanxi, and from its heights, the yellow lands of northern China stretch far into the hazy horizon. But what distinguishes Qizishan is its spiritual narrative. The mountain is widely believed to be the birthplace of Guan Yu, who lived during the tumultuous era of the late Eastern Han dynasty. In life, Guan Yu was famed for his loyalty to Liu Bei and his fearsome martial skill. In death, his legacy only grew. He was canonized by emperors, praised by poets, and feared by generals. Today, his face, fierce, bearded, and intense, is recognized across all of East Asia, and Mount Guandi is one of the most sacred sites associated with his worship. The heart of Mount Guandi's spiritual presence lies in the Guandi Temple complex, a magnificent assembly of ancient shrines, halls, and pavilions nestled on a pine-covered plateau midway up the mountain. Originally constructed over 1,500 years ago, during the Northern Wei dynasty, the complex has been rebuilt and expanded many times over the centuries, surviving wars, dynastic transitions, and revolutions. It stretches across multiple levels, connected by stone staircases and arched wooden bridges, each corner thick with incense smoke and echoing with the chime of bronze bells. The most revered structure is the main hall of the Guandi Temple, where a massive statue of Guan Yu sits enthroned, clad in flowing armor and painted in rich vermilion and jade tones. His expression is fierce yet just, and pilgrims approach him not merely with reverence, but with a sense of seeking moral clarity. Soldiers, police officers, businessmen, and politicians from across China make pilgrimages here, not to ask for power, but to affirm allegiance to Guan Yu's legendary values of loyalty, honor, and discipline. On festival days, particularly during Guan Yu's birthday on the 24th day of the 6th lunar month, the entire complex hums with life. Lion dances, operatic performances, ritual offerings, and lines of devotees that trail down the mountain paths like a ribbon of faith. But beyond temples and statues, Mount Guandi's natural beauty is deeply spiritual in itself. Its pine forests are vast and fragrant, especially after rain when the scent of needles and wet earth fills the air. In spring and summer, the mountainsides are dappled with wildflowers and medicinal herbs, some of which have been gathered by monks and villagers for generations. Macaques sometimes swing through the trees, and golden pheasants flash bright amid the underbrush, startling those who tread too quietly. As autumn approaches, the slopes are painted in fiery hues, red maple, yellow oak, and the deep orange of persimmons ripening on high branches. Cliffs and crags adorn the ridgelines like natural fortresses. These sheer rock faces have earned nicknames such as the Warrior's Wall or the Sword's Edge due to their martial profiles. Local legend tells of Guan Yu training here as a youth, wielding his massive green dragon crescent blade among these rocks and perfecting the style that would make him an immortal figure of Chinese lore. Whether fact or fiction, the landscape seems to support the myth. The very geography feels shaped by the same hand that carved the stories of Guan Yu into the cultural consciousness. Among the most memorable sites is Yunpan Pavilion, a solitary wooden structure clinging to a rock outcrop like a watchtower of the gods. On clear days, it offers views stretching out over the Fen River basin and the distant outlines of Taiyuan's urban sprawl. In the early morning, however, the view is rarely clear. More often, the pavilion is engulfed in rolling fog, giving it the appearance of floating in the sky. It's a site that has inspired countless poems, paintings, and spiritual reflections. In this silence, broken only by wind or the distant sound of a bell, one begins to understand why sages and warriors alike sought clarity on this mountain. Qizishan's trails are both spiritual and physically demanding. Pilgrims often take a circuitous route that weaves past all the major temples, shrines, and meditation caves. The Bailu Trail, White Deer Path, named for a legendary albino deer said to have led an old monk to enlightenment, meanders through old-growth forests and across bubbling mountain springs. The Dengdao Path, meaning path of ascent, is steeper, used by more serious devotees who ascend in silence, treating each step as a meditation. Along both routes, stone steles inscribed with aphorisms about loyalty, courage, and humility stand like spiritual mileposts. In winter, Mount Qomolangma transforms again. Heavy snow blankets its peaks and trails, turning temples into monochrome sanctuaries wrapped in silence. The pines bend under the weight, and the footpaths are often marked only by the prints of wild animals or the occasional lantern left behind by a passing monk. It is a difficult time to climb, but those who do speak of the deep solitude that winter brings, a chance to hear one's own breath and the heartbeat of the mountain beneath the snow. Unlike many tourist-heavy destinations, Qizishan has not been overdeveloped. While there are modest inns and tea houses in the villages at its base, many run by families who have lived in the shadow of the mountain for generations, the mountain retains its authenticity. Devotion, not entertainment, is its currency. Even modern infrastructure is subtle. Paved paths disappear quickly into forest trails, and electricity fades in favor of candlelight within temple walls. Ultimately, Mount Qomolangma is a mountain of character, not in the geological sense, but in the moral sense. It is a place where history, faith, philosophy, and nature combine to create a space that inspires reflection on strength, righteousness, and perseverance. It is not a mountain that invites superficial awe, but one that leaves a lasting impression on those who look beyond the granite and the pine and see instead the deeper roots of Chinese spiritual culture, where a man once lived, who stood for loyalty above life itself, and whose spirit still walks the high ridges of Qizishan. Mount Wuling, straddling the dramatic borderlands between Hunan and Chongqing, is not merely a mountain but a sprawling and labyrinthine massif of mythic proportions. Known collectively as the Wulingshan Range, this region is home to some of the most surreal, cinematic, and geologically bewildering landscapes in all of China. It encompasses a vast array of environments, from jagged limestone pillars and karst cliffs to ancient forests, subterranean caves, and mist-filled gorges. And at the heart of this mountainous wonderland lies one of the most iconic landscapes in the world, Zhangjiajie National Forest Park, whose towering sandstone spires inspired the floating Hallelujah Mountains in James Cameron's Avatar. But Mount Wuling is far more than Zhangjiajie alone. This entire mountain system, reaching across Hunan, Guizhou, and Chongqing, covers an area of immense ecological and geological richness, blending fantasy-like topography with millennia of human history, spiritual traditions, and remote biodiversity. At its core, Wuling is a sanctuary, one that captures the raw power of nature and the meditative stillness of ancient China in equal measure. Approaching Mount Wuling from the Hunan side, one first encounters the towering sandstone pillars of Zhangjiajie, rising hundreds of meters from the forest floor like the stone bones of sleeping giants. These quartzite sandstone columns, formed over millions of years by physical erosion and weathering, number in the thousands. Some stand solitary, some in tight clusters like frozen battalions of nature's soldiers. The tallest among them, such as the Southern Sky Column, renamed Avatar Hallelujah Mountain, soar to heights of over 1,000 meters and are often wrapped in mists, creating the illusion that they hover above the earth. Winding walkways, suspended bridges, and glass skywalks allow visitors to journey deep into this otherworldly realm, with names that evoke poetry and legend: the Sea of Clouds, the Natural Great Wall, 10-Mile Gallery, and the First Bridge Under Heaven. From the glass elevator of Bailong, the world's tallest outdoor lift, to the winding paths of Qianzi Mountain, every vantage point offers a new angle of grandeur, a fresh composition in stone and sky that feels more like myth than geography. Beyond the central attraction of Zhangjiajie lies the broader, lesser-known wilderness of Wulingshan. The region transitions from the fantastical verticality of sandstone spires to the more rugged horizontal expanses of karst peaks and limestone escarpments, particularly in the Chongqing and Guizhou sections of the range. These landscapes are wilder, less curated, and often untouched by mass tourism. Towering cliffs plunge into narrow river canyons where vines dangle from mossy ledges, and ancient trees twist skyward through mist and rain. One such untouched jewel is the Fanjingshan Reserve, situated on the southwestern edge of the Wulingshan Range in Guizhou. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, revered not only for its biodiversity but for its surreal appearance. Massive rock outcrops like the Red Cloud's Golden Summit, where a temple seemingly perches atop a narrow pinnacle only reachable by a long stairway carved into sheer stone. Fanjingshan is also home to rare species like the Guizhou golden monkey, clouded leopards, and countless species of endemic orchids and mosses that cling to the cliffs like whispered secrets. In the heart of Wuling, ethnic minority villages pepper the valleys and foothills. The Tujia, Miao, and Dong peoples have inhabited these mountains for centuries, living in harmony with the complex terrain. Their stilted wooden homes nestle against hillsides, and they maintain deep-rooted spiritual connections with the forests, rivers, and peaks. Ancient traditions are still preserved here, such as the crying marriage songs of the Tujia brides or the reed pipe music of the dawn. Their mountain agriculture, rice terraces, cornfields, and medicinal herb gardens, clings precariously to steep slopes and forest edges, sculpted by centuries of quiet resilience. Despite the surreal beauty of Zhangjiajie's dramatic cliffs, many of Wuling's more hidden treasures reside in its cave systems and underground rivers. Deep beneath the limestone plateaus are labyrinths of karst caverns with names like Huanglong Cave and Jiuqian Cave, each filled with surreal rock formations, crystal-clear pools, and subterranean waterfalls that echo like distant thunder. The Huanglong Cave in particular spans more than 15 kilometers and features underground lakes, cathedral-like chambers, and a cascade of limestone steps built by water over ages, truly a world within a world. Above ground, Wuling is a living dream of cloud seas and sky gardens. During humid summer months, the peaks become islands in an ocean of mist, and the rising sun paints the air in hues of gold and lavender. Birds cry through the valleys, and waterfalls tumble down cliffs with hypnotic rhythm. The seasonal changes here are profound. Spring brings wild azaleas and soft rain, summer bathes the peaks in emerald green, autumn sets the forests ablaze in red and amber, and winter cloaks the range in snow and frost so delicate it seems conjured from silk. A particularly spiritual part of Wulingshan is Qianmen Mountain, near Zhangjiajie city. Its name means Heaven's Gate, and it is crowned by a natural arch in the cliff face, the result of a collapsed cave, forming a vertical gash more than 130 meters high. Pilgrims climb a stairway of 999 steps to reach this celestial doorway, believed to be a portal between the earthly and divine realms. It's a place where Taoist monks once meditated, high above the mortal world. A thrilling road, nicknamed 99 Bends Road to Heaven, winds up the mountainside with hairpin turns so tight and frequent they resemble a coiled dragon. Above, the world's longest cable car lift floats over forests and rivers, ascending slowly into the clouds. The entire Wulingshan region is deeply embedded in Chinese mythology and folklore. It is said that immortals once gathered here to commune with the heavens, and the misty peaks were believed to be sites where the boundaries between heaven and earth blur. Tales abound of dragons sleeping in the river canyons, of hermits who became sages, and of sentient trees whispering secrets to those who walk the forest paths with reverence. But as modernity creeps in from surrounding cities, the challenge remains: how to preserve the sacredness and raw beauty of Mount Wuling in the face of development. While parts of the range are protected by national parks and heritage designations, others face deforestation, infrastructure expansion, and mass tourism. Efforts are being made to balance ecological conservation with cultural preservation. Local communities, conservationists, and heritage workers are increasingly working together to ensure that this fragile realm remains untamed, reverent, and alive for future generations. Mount Wuling is not a single peak. It is a journey, a theater of stone and cloud that stretches across provinces and epochs. It is a place where the earth has sculpted art more powerful than any brushstroke, where tradition flows as deeply as the rivers carving the valleys, and where the imagination is constantly challenged by what seems impossible yet stands there, real, monumental, and everlasting. Mount Dahaishan, in Liaoning province may not tower in altitude like the iconic ranges of Tibet or Sichuan, but it carries a serene and quietly powerful beauty that speaks to a different facet of China's natural wonder, one where mountain meets sea, and history whispers from windswept pine forests. Rising modestly along the coast near Dalian, this coastal mountain, often cloaked in morning fog and ringed by rugged cliffs, is an elegant meeting point between the ancient and the elemental. Its name, literally Great Black Mountain, evokes the dark, forested silhouette it casts over the Bohai Sea, especially at dusk when the sun sinks behind the pine ridges and gilds the coastal edge in amber light. Mount Dahai is not remote in the sense of uncharted wilderness, but its presence feels secluded and intimate, guarding centuries of spirituality, folklore, and maritime history. As one approaches from the outskirts of Dalian, the terrain slowly rises into undulating hills that eventually resolve into a distinctive spine of ridges, rocks, and forests. Despite its elevation being just over 663 meters, 2,175 feet, the mountain stands as the highest peak in the southern part of the Liaodong Peninsula, providing breathtaking views of the sea below and the dotted islands stretching across the coastal waters. What makes Mount Dahe truly remarkable is its dual identity, a coastal stronghold of Taoist and Buddhist heritage, and a place of enduring ecological and cultural harmony. Walking the trails that lace through its pine-covered ridges, one moves between dimensions, between past and present, the sacred and the mundane, land and sea. The forested slopes are dominated by Korean pine, Chinese red pine, and oak trees, many of which are centuries old. In the spring and summer, the mountain blooms with wildflowers, mosses, and ferns that carpet the floor beneath the canopy, and in the crisp autumn months, the foliage transforms into a riot of russet, gold, and crimson, contrasting dramatically with the deep blue of the Bohai waters in the distance. Wildlife in the region includes foxes, badgers, various birds of prey, and songbirds whose melodic calls echo through the valleys in the early morning mist. What elevates Dahe beyond a scenic coastal hike is its role as a spiritual sanctuary. Scattered across its slopes are over 50 ancient temples, shrines, pagodas, and carved tablets, some dating back to the Tang and Ming dynasties. The most famous of these is the Dahe Mountain Temple Complex, a network of religious structures that seamlessly blend into the natural surroundings. The main temple, Daheishan Taigu Temple, sits high above the forested slopes, partially hidden among trees and boulders, its red eaves and stone steps weathered by centuries of sea breeze and devotion. Monks in flowing robes can still be seen tending incense at sunrise, while pilgrims climb the worn stone paths, often barefoot, chanting prayers with every step. The blend of Buddhist tranquility and Taoist reverence is palpable. Many believe this mountain possesses a potent geomantic energy, situated at a spiritual confluence between sky and ocean. Ancient stele, stone inscriptions, mark spots where sages once meditated, and visitors today often pause at the Penglai platform, a rocky outcrop believed to offer a metaphysical gateway to the immortals realm in Taoist mythology. A climb to the summit of Mount Dahe reveals one of its most unforgettable features, the sweeping panorama of the Bohai Sea, with fishing boats bobbing below, islands like Bangchue Island and Xinghai Bay visible on clear days, and the coastline wrapping in a gentle arc from Dalian to the distant northern ports. The wind is cool, even in summer, carrying with it the salty breath of the ocean and the distant echo of temple bells. In winter, the mountain takes on a stark beauty as frost dusts the pine needles and sea fog rolls over the land like a silent tide. Unlike the busier pilgrimage sites in central or western China, Dahe is less commercialized and more contemplative. It attracts local devotees, seasoned hikers, artists, and those seeking solitude. The paths that wind through its cliffs and groves lead not only to temples and vistas but also to hidden caves, hermitages, and crumbling stone relics covered in moss. These silent witnesses to time seem to speak more loudly than the grand monuments. Small Buddha carvings in grottos, old wooden prayer wheels that still turn, and faded murals inside weathered halls where incense smoke has darkened the rafters for generations. In Chinese lore, Dahe is often associated with watchfulness and maritime protection. Legend tells of sea gods and mountain spirits collaborating to shield sailors from storms, and offerings made to the Sea Mother, Mazu, or the Dragon King are still left at coastal altars and mountain shrines. These beliefs are tightly woven into the local fishing culture that has thrived for centuries along the shores beneath the mountain. It's not uncommon for fishermen to visit Dahe before embarking on long voyages, seeking blessings for safe passage and bountiful harvests. Modern conservation efforts are helping to preserve the ecological and historical integrity of Mount Dahe. Protected as part of a larger nature reserve and cultural heritage zone, the mountain has become a model for low-impact tourism, with designated paths, eco-education centers, and temple restoration programs aiming to retain the mountain's quiet majesty even as more visitors discover its tranquil charm. As the light fades and shadows stretch across the ridges, Mount Dahe feels suspended between realms, part mountain, part sentinel, part sanctuary. Its beauty is not in overwhelming scale, but in the graceful way it balances the elemental forces around it, earth and sea, forest and sky, the sacred and the temporal. It is a place to breathe deeply, to listen intently, and to witness how time, devotion, and nature shape a landscape into something far more than just a mountain. It becomes memory, spirit, a silent prayer etched in stone and pine, whispered eternally to the waves below. Mount Jinfoshan, rising from the southern edge of Chongqing Municipality in the heart of southwestern China, is a spectacular convergence of geological drama and biological wonder. Its name, literally Golden Buddha Mountain, evokes a sense of reverence, and rightfully so. This vast karst plateau is not only one of China's greatest ecological sanctuaries, but also a living museum of deep time, a place where evolution, erosion, and isolation have crafted a landscape as rare as it is unreal. With its towering limestone cliffs, plunging sinkholes, massive waterfalls, and cloud-draped forests, Jinfoshan is both an explorer's dream and a scientist's treasure trove. What makes Jinfoshan truly unique is its geological foundation. Unlike the jagged peaks of western Tibet or the rounded granite domes of eastern China, Mount Jinfo is a high karst plateau, a type of terrain formed over millennia by the dissolution of soluble rocks such as limestone and dolomite. Over millions of years, rainfall and underground streams have sculpted the landscape into a labyrinth of vertical cliffs, deep gorges, subterranean rivers, and enormous sinkholes known as changkengs, many of which are so large and deep that they form isolated ecosystems of their own. The plateau stretches across an elevation ranging from 500 meters to over 2,200 meters, 1,640 to 7,217 feet, above sea level, forming a dramatic dome that rises from the rolling hills of Nanchuan district like a citadel. At its highest points, the cliffs drop nearly vertically into hidden valleys below, often cloaked in mist, while waterfalls cascade from the lips of the plateau in streams of silver, some plunging over 300 meters, 984 feet, straight down into the verdant abyss. Jinfoshan's climate is a rare subtropical highland mix, and that, combined with its relative inaccessibility, has led to extreme biodiversity and a high degree of endemism. The mountain is part of the UNESCO South China Karst World Heritage Site, and for good reason. It harbors over 5,000 species of flora and fauna, many of which are found nowhere else on Earth. Its forests are dense with ancient trees, rare orchids, medicinal plants, and strange fungi. The undergrowth rustles with endemic frogs, brightly colored insects, and secretive mammals. Perhaps most famously, Mount Jinfo is one of the last strongholds of the Guizhou snub-nosed monkey, Rhinopithecus brellici, a rare and critically endangered primate whose ghostly pale face and expressive amber eyes seem almost otherworldly. These monkeys, who travel in tight-knit family groups through the misty upper forests, are deeply symbolic to conservationists and local communities alike. Spotting one in the wild is akin to witnessing a miracle. The plateau's isolation has also protected ancient stands of southern Chinese fir, one of the oldest tree species on Earth, dating back to the time of the dinosaurs. Their spire-like forms stretch toward the sky through the fog, creating an almost mythological atmosphere that would not seem out of place in a fantasy epic. Birds of prey circle overhead, eagles and hawks that nest in the cliff faces, while rare amphibians and reptiles scurry through the leaf litter below. Jinfoshan is riddled with over 100 caves, many of which extend for kilometers underground. These karst caves are filled with dramatic stalactites, stone curtains, and crystalline chambers, some only recently mapped. Inside, subterranean rivers flow through stone tunnels where light never reaches, and bizarre, blind species of fish and crustaceans survive in utter darkness. The Dashahe River, one of the mountain's main arteries, cuts a dramatic gorge through the plateau's southern slope and disappears into the earth through a series of collapsed caverns, re-emerging miles away in a different province. Human history here is just as rich as the natural one. Mount Jinfo has been a Taoist sacred mountain for over 1,000 years. Legends tell of immortals meditating in the caves, of reclusive monks who studied the cosmos from its heights, and of emperors who sent emissaries to seek guidance from hermits who called the mist-shrouded cliffs their home. Ancient temples and meditation platforms are hidden among the trees, often built into the rock itself, their eaves moss-covered and worn smooth by centuries of wind. One of the most breathtaking features of the mountain is the Golden Buddha Temple, Jinfo Sai, perched near the peak. Despite its relatively recent reconstruction, it embodies the timeless awe of the mountain. From here, on a clear day, you can see across a sea of clouds to distant peaks far beyond Chongqing. Yet more often, the landscape is blanketed in a dreamy fog that swirls between the pines, as if the mountain is exhaling secrets into the world. Access to Mount Jinfo has improved in recent years, thanks to conservation-minded development. A cable car now ascends through the cloud layers, offering panoramic views of the cliffs, forests, and waterfalls. The ecotourism zone is strictly regulated to preserve the mountain's fragile environment. Well-maintained boardwalks and stone stairways guide visitors along steep ridges, to glass skywalks suspended over dizzying drops, and through corridors of bamboo and fern that seem untouched by modern time. Yet even with these modern touches, Mount Jinfo retains an ancient, wild energy. To walk its trails is to walk not just through nature, but through layers of geological and biological time. It feels eternal, enduring, and above all, sacred. You are reminded, step after step, that this mountain is not simply a place to admire but a world unto itself. A vertical rainforest, a fortress of stone, a kingdom of mist and life that exists far from the ordinary world. At night, when the last rays of the sun catch the cliffs in hues of gold and rose, it becomes clear why this mountain earned the name Golden Buddha. Not just for any statue it houses, but because of what it represents, a tranquil, powerful force of nature, glowing from within, eternal and untouched, both heaven and earth carved from stone. Mount Miaofengshan, nestled in the western suburbs of Beijing and reaching a modest but spiritually powerful height of around 1,300 meters, 4,265 feet, is not only a striking natural landmark, it is also one of China's most important Taoist pilgrimage mountains. Despite being within an hour's drive from the sprawling urban intensity of the Chinese capital, Miaofengshan feels like a different world entirely. Tranquil, sacred, and soaked in layers of myth, legend, and devotion that go back centuries. The mountain lies at the edge of the Western Hills, part of the larger Taihang mountain range that forms the rugged backbone separating northern China's plains from the highlands beyond. But Miaofengshan stands apart not because of its altitude or geological uniqueness, but because of its spiritual and cultural depth. Since at least the Ming dynasty, 14th to 17th century, the mountain has been a renowned site of Taoist worship, especially for pilgrims who seek blessings from the goddess of the azure clouds, known as Bixia Yuanjun, also revered at Mount Tai in Shandong. Every spring, during the 4th lunar month, thousands of pilgrims embark on a sacred journey to the temple complex atop the ridge, retracing a centuries-old tradition that fuses Taoist devotion, folk religion, and community celebration. This pilgrimage, known as the Miaofengshan Fair, is one of the oldest and most iconic religious festivals in northern China. The fair includes traditional opera performances, incense-burning rituals, drum processions, acrobatic displays, and stalls selling charms, paintings, and sacred calligraphy. For many, it is a spiritual cleansing and a personal renewal. The main trail up the mountain winds for several kilometers through pine and cypress forests, and is dotted with smaller shrines, rest stops, and stone tablets etched with scripture and poetry. One of the most remarkable aspects of this path is that it still retains the energy of an ancient pilgrimage route. Unlike more modernized tourist sites, the route up Miaofengshan feels organic, with well-worn stone stairs carved into the mountainside, weathered incense altars tucked between boulders, and centuries-old carvings of Taoist symbols and divine figures embedded into the cliffs. As you ascend, the forest gradually thins, revealing spectacular ridgeline views of the Beijing plain far below. On a clear day, especially in autumn when the skies are crisp and blue, visitors can see the outline of Beijing's Forbidden City, the glinting spires of modern skyscrapers in the city center, and the rolling waves of surrounding hills fading into the horizon. It's a visual reminder of Miaofengshan's unique position, both guardian and observer of the imperial capital, both close to and beyond the reach of worldly affairs. At the summit lies the goddess temple, Bixia Yuanjun Miao, the spiritual heart of the mountain. This modest yet sacred structure clings to the rock with breathtaking resolve, perched just below the peak, seemingly suspended between the heavens and the earth. Inside, worshippers light candles and offer fruits and incense, leaving behind red prayer ribbons fluttering in the mountain wind. The atmosphere here is quiet, otherworldly. The flicker of candlelight on worn stone and the scent of sandalwood smoke create a timeless sanctuary untouched by modernity. Surrounding the main temple are a number of smaller Taoist shrines, some tucked into cliffside alcoves, others nestled beneath ancient trees. Many are dedicated to minor deities, mountain spirits, or celestial guardians, and some still host hermits and spiritual practitioners who dwell in solitude on the mountainside. Stories are told of wandering sages, of healing miracles, of villagers who trekked here during times of plague and war, believing the goddess's protection would shield them from calamity. Beyond its spiritual significance, Miaofengshan is also a haven for nature lovers. The mountain's flora and fauna are remarkably rich, especially in spring and early summer. Rhododendrons bloom along the higher ridges, their petals a vivid contrast to the dark evergreens. Wildflowers cluster near mountain streams, while rare birds such as the Eurasian cuckoo and the golden pheasant flit through the canopy. Insects hum in the underbrush, and the occasional fox or badger can be spotted by patient hikers. In recent years, Miaofengshan has been carefully managed to strike a balance between conservation, spiritual tradition, and tourism. Unlike more commercialized sites, the mountain retains a strong atmosphere of authenticity and solemnity. Much of this is thanks to the local communities, particularly in the nearby village of Miaofengshan, which have worked to preserve the mountain's cultural rituals, oral histories, and ecological integrity. One of the mountain's most remarkable features is its seasonal transformation. In spring, the pilgrimage trail is alive with color and movement. In summer, the forested slopes are thick with humidity and green canopy. In autumn, the entire mountain turns golden red as the leaves change, and in winter, snow settles on the shrine roofs and temple courtyards, transforming the mountaintop into a serene, monochrome sanctuary. Each season offers a different face of the divine. For visitors less inclined toward the spiritual, Miaofengshan still offers a deeply enriching experience. Its combination of cultural resonance, scenic grandeur, and historical depth makes it a unique destination, especially so close to a global metropolis like Beijing. Whether one comes for meditation, for photography, for hiking, or simply for quiet reflection, the mountain offers a perspective that transcends time. And at night, when the capital's lights shimmer faintly on the far horizon and the mountain lies cloaked in starlit silence, it's easy to understand why Miaofengshan has long been considered not just a sacred place, but a bridge between worlds. Here, gods and humans meet on stone steps among the pine winds, and the spirit of the mountain speaks, if one listens carefully enough. Mount Luohanshan, rising solemnly from the river-split terrain of southern Sichuan, is not merely a mountain. It is a monument of stone, spirit, and silence, where natural beauty and religious reverence blend into a seamless realm of awe. Unlike the towering celebrity of Mount Qomolangma or the popular throngs of Leshan's giant Buddha, Luohanshan rests in comparative obscurity, shielded from crowds and commercialization. Yet for those who venture there, it offers something perhaps even more profound: a sacred forested peak where ancient stone Buddhas gaze eternally from cliff walls, watching the centuries pass beneath moss and wind. The name Luohan itself is deeply significant. Derived from the Sanskrit Arhat, Luohan in Chinese Buddhist tradition refers to enlightened disciples of the Buddha, figures who have transcended the cycle of suffering and attained spiritual awakening. As such, Mount Luohan is not just a natural landscape but a spiritual embodiment of serenity and wisdom, shaped by centuries of artistic devotion. Tucked between the lush valleys and karst ridges of southern Sichuan, the mountain is cloaked in dense forests, predominantly composed of bamboo, cypress, pine, and maple. The elevation here is modest compared to the snow-capped ranges further west, but its steep cliffs and hidden grottos create a dramatic topography that has sheltered monks, sculptors, and sages since at least the Tang dynasty. The forested slopes offer a cool, humid microclimate teeming with biodiversity, from rare medicinal herbs and orchids to birdsong echoing through the canopy. What truly sets Luohanshan apart, however, are the hundreds of Buddhist carvings etched directly into the cliffs that flank the mountain's winding paths and secluded grottos. These stone Buddhas, weathered, half-shrouded in vines, their faces worn smooth by rain and time, are silent witnesses to a millennium of devotion. Some sit in quiet meditation, legs crossed in lotus position. Others stand solemnly, robes cascading down in flowing lines chiseled with exquisite precision. And others are arranged in symmetrical rows, the famed Thousand Luohan Wall, each figure unique in posture and expression, each a fragment of the infinite. Most of these carvings date from the Song to Ming dynasties, with some possibly older. They vary in size from miniature figures no larger than a hand to massive effigies standing over 10 meters tall. While stylistic elements align them with Sichuan's greater Buddhist stone carving tradition, such as seen at Dazu rock carvings, their isolation makes them feel more mystical, more ancient, as though they were never meant for spectacle, only prayer. One of the most revered sections of the mountain is Luohan Cave, a natural rock alcove where a central-seated Buddha is surrounded by rows of smaller arhats, all carved into the surrounding stone like guardians of some inner sanctum. Inside, it's cool and dim, with trickles of water running down the stone walls, feeding small pools of moss-covered rock. Offerings of incense and fruit still appear here, left by local villagers who maintain a quiet faith that predates memory. Scattered throughout the mountain are abandoned temple ruins, overgrown stairways leading to collapsed prayer halls, and crumbling stupas nestled beneath ancient trees. Some have been reclaimed by the forest, their outlines barely visible beneath thickets of bamboo and vines. Others are still partially intact, containing fading murals and half-broken statues where the interplay of natural decay and divine imagery gives a haunting, dreamlike atmosphere. These remnants speak of a once thriving monastic community, now long vanished, leaving behind only echoes and stone. Hiking through Mount Luohan is a meditative experience in itself. The trails, largely unpaved and sometimes difficult to trace, thread through thick underbrush and along cliffside ledges where sheer drops open into emerald green valleys below. Along the way, small shrines built into the rock provide rest stops for pilgrims and wanderers. You may encounter solitary monks or hermits, retreating from worldly distractions, who still dwell in caves or rustic huts hidden in the trees. They speak little, their eyes reflecting a life spent in the presence of stillness and spirit. The soundscape of the mountain is equally enchanting. Bird calls, the rustling of bamboo in the wind, and the soft murmur of distant streams create an ambient hush, broken only by the occasional temple bell or chanting from unseen lips. The entire mountain seems to hum with quiet awareness, as if the very rocks are alive with contemplation. What makes Luohanshan particularly special is its lack of overt commercialization. While many sacred mountains in China have been developed with cable cars, large tourism infrastructure, or commercialized spiritual performances, Luohanshan remains raw and authentic. The roads that lead to it are narrow, often winding through countryside dotted with traditional homes and rice paddies. Small rural villages at the foot of the mountain maintain traditional lifestyles, growing tea, tending goats, and preserving oral histories of the mountain's powers and past. Seasonally, Luohanshan transforms. In spring, cherry blossoms and plum flowers bloom across the lower slopes, casting a gentle pink hue over the stone Buddhas. In summer, the forest grows thick and verdant, with occasional mist rolling through the valleys and making the statues appear as ghostly silhouettes. In autumn, fiery maple leaves fall softly across moss-covered carvings, adding to the sense of poetic melancholy. And in winter, light snow dusts the figures in white, giving them an even more transcendent appearance, as though they have emerged not from stone, but from cloud and myth. While it remains underappreciated on the national tourist radar, those who come to Mount Luohan speak of it in hushed reverence. It is a place where the sacred is embedded in silence, where devotion is carved into cliff faces instead of shouted from temple loudspeakers. It is, in essence, a testament to the enduring presence of quiet enlightenment in a rapidly modernizing world. To stand in front of one of these weathered Buddhas, deep in the forest, with no sound but the breath of the mountain around you, is to understand a deeper rhythm of time. It is to glimpse the patience of stone, the faith of generations, and the stillness that lies at the heart of all seeking. Mount Luohan is not just a mountain, it is a prayer cast in stone, an echo of the divine etched into the earth, still whispering after 1,000 years. Mount Yunwu, known poetically as Cloud Mist Mountain, rests like a silent giant in the tranquil hinterlands of Guangxi, veiled perpetually in drifting fog and framed by verdant rice terraces, dense bamboo groves, and labyrinthine limestone caves. It is a place that escapes time, gently nestled in the folds of southern China's karst terrain, where mountain, mist, and myth intertwine to form a landscape both earthly and otherworldly. Far from the booming urban zones or heavily trafficked national parks, Mount Yunwu offers a rare experience, a natural sanctuary of serenity, dripping with dew and legend, where the pulse of ancient rural life continues in harmony with the landscape. The name Yunwu, meaning cloud and mist, is no exaggeration or poetic flourish, it is a living description. Almost every morning, banks of low-lying cloud roll in over the slopes, brushing through the sculpted rice paddies that climb in terraces up the lower elevations of the mountain. As the sun rises, the mist shifts and twirls, creating silhouettes of distant peaks, hidden temples, and giant bamboo stands that sway like ancient sentinels. This mystical environment makes Mount Yunwu feel less like a peak and more like a dream suspended above the earth, always just barely in reach, always partly obscured. The rice terraces themselves are a work of both nature and centuries of rural ingenuity. Dug painstakingly into the steep slopes by hand over generations, they reflect not only the toil of the locals but their deep understanding of the mountains. Rhythms. During the growing season, when the paddies are flooded, the entire mountainside becomes a mirror to the sky, a liquid mosaic of clouds and green shoots. Water buffalo trudge through the mud while farmers in broad straw hats tend to each narrow ledge, giving the land a texture of living tradition. The paddies are irrigated by bamboo aqueducts, some still maintained using age-old techniques passed down orally through the village elders. Beyond the cultivated lower slopes, the wild forest begins, dense, untamed, and humming with life. Towering bamboo groves, thick as cathedral columns, rise in every direction, accompanied by old-growth oaks, subtropical pines, and camphor trees. The forest here is home to rare species of birds and butterflies, many of which are endemic to southern Guangxi. The air is perpetually humid, perfumed by flowering vines and thick with the buzzing of cicadas in summer. As one climbs higher, the silence deepens, broken only by the occasional rustle of wildlife or the soft gurgle of a mountain spring spilling over smooth stones. Winding through the bamboo forests are ancient stone trails, many overgrown and half forgotten, used for centuries by pilgrims and villagers. These paths lead to hidden caves and sacred grottos, some barely marked, others adorned with faint carvings or faded talismans tied to branches. The karst topography of Guangxi ensures that the mountain is riddled with caves, some shallow and mossy, others vast and echoing, reaching deep into the limestone core of the mountain. Many of these caves are the subjects of local legend, believed to be inhabited by spirits, dragons, or immortals who descended from the mist. One particularly well-known cavern is the Shurelian Water Curtain Cave, named for the thin waterfall that flows continuously over its mossy entrance. Inside, the cave opens into a massive dome of glittering stalactites, with underground pools of clear, cold water that reflect the hanging stone formations like a natural mirror. Lanterns left by past visitors, simple clay oil lamps, still rest in alcoves, their flames long gone but their purpose remembered. Within these depths, the sense of time disappears. The cool, moist air, the sound of droplets falling in darkness, and the sight of slow-growing stone curtains whisper a narrative that spans geological eons. Spirituality suffuses Mount Yunwu just as deeply as its clouds. Though not one of China's canonical sacred peaks, the mountain has long been revered locally as a place of spiritual potency. At several points along its ridges, there are small Taoist shrines and rustic Buddhist hermitages, built into the cliffside or nestled beneath overhangs. The most prominent among them is Wuyun Guan, Five Clouds Temple, a humble but venerable structure dating back to the late Ming dynasty. Built of stone and wood, its weathered red columns and dragon-carved lintels rise out of the forest as if grown from it. The resident monks tend to small vegetable gardens and perform daily incense rituals, maintaining the temple's centuries-old rhythm of meditation and simplicity. Visitors who ascend to the summit, or near to it, for the true peak remains wild and inaccessible, are rewarded with a view unlike any other. The endless folds of rice paddies below shimmer like reptilian scales, the fog weaving in and out of the folds of the land like silk through fingers. On clear days, one can see far across the karst valleys of Guangxi, dotted with limestone spires and distant river systems. But far more often, the view is ephemeral, shapes appear and vanish in the fog, and the horizon exists only as a guess. It's not a place that gives itself easily to photography or definition. It is felt more than seen. Local legends abound about Mount Yunwu's origins and spirit. Some say the mountain was once a sleeping dragon, and the mist is its breath, rising each morning to feed the rain. Others believe a powerful immortal lives in one of the caves, guarding a spring of water that grants clarity of mind and spirit. Many villagers still make annual offerings at certain boulders or trees, believed to be home to Shanshan, mountain gods, who must be appeased for good harvests and protection from landslides. The communities surrounding Mount Yunwu live slowly, in harmony with the mountain. The homes here are constructed traditionally, with mud brick walls, tiled roofs, and woven bamboo ceilings. Festivals are still marked by dance, music, and offerings to both Buddhist and Taoist deities. Old women pass down herbal lore about plants that grow on the mountain, used for everything from healing teas to protective incense. The stories of Yunwu are not written in guidebooks but remembered in lullabies and whispered during evening fire circles. In an age where development races across China's landscapes, Mount Yunwu remains a sanctuary of the old world, untouched by modern infrastructure and resisting easy access. There are no cable cars, no commercial stalls, no bustling parking lots. To get there is to journey, on foot, by narrow trails, through rice field paths and slippery forest steps. And when you arrive not just at a destination, but at a different state of being, slowed, softened, and quieted by the embrace of clouds, stone, and living memory. Mount Yunwu is a place where the veil between the material and the spiritual seems thinner, where everything feels bathed in mystery and meaning, and where the heart learns to listen more than look. It is not just a place to see, but a place to dissolve into. Mount Qomolangma, or Qizishan, rises subtly yet majestically from the east coast province of Zhejiang, hidden within the folds of fog-laced forest ridges and bearing the quiet, contemplative presence of a place long forgotten by the momentum of modern life. Unlike the soaring giants of Western China or the famed peaks immortalized in poetry and ink painting, Qizishan is humble, even reserved, a mountain of whispers, not proclamations. Yet it holds immense spiritual and ecological significance, and for those who venture into its mists, it reveals layers of subtle beauty, historical weight, and a stillness that borders on the sacred. Stretching across the borderlands between Linhai and Qiantai counties, Qizishan is part of the larger Qiantai mountain range, but it maintains its distinct identity, both geographically and culturally. The name Qizishan has ancient roots, referring to a hidden granary or stored treasure, a fitting metaphor for a mountain that keeps its wonders veiled behind thick canopies of forest, hidden grottos, and seasonal clouds. This is a place where fog drapes the ridges year-round, where the forest floor is perpetually damp, and where time slows with the rhythm of dew collecting on moss and the hush of wind through pine needles. The ecological fabric of Qizishan is one of quiet diversity. The lower elevations are blanketed in deciduous and bamboo forest, with twisting trails snaking their way through groves of Phalasterschie's bamboo, chestnut trees, and wild camellias. Higher up, the trees become conifers, with cedar and fir trees standing sentinel-like amid patches of rhododendron and lichen-covered stones. Because of the moisture-laden microclimate, the mountain supports a wide variety of mosses, ferns, and medicinal herbs, many of which are gathered seasonally by locals. In spring, the slopes light up with the blush of azaleas and cherry blossoms, while autumn turns the mountain into a kaleidoscope of reds and golds. Unlike many more developed tourist regions, Qizishan is not overly commercialized. Instead, it preserves its essence through ancient hiking paths, quiet monasteries, and the echoes of forgotten pilgrims. The trails themselves are narrow and rugged, often following old stone steps that have been worn smooth by centuries of use, threading their way past abandoned hermitages, crumbling stone altars, and trickling mountain springs. Many of these paths were once part of the ancient Qizishan Road, a historic route that connected the eastern sea coast with inland China, used by traders, monks, and traveling scholars as early as the Tang dynasty. Embedded in the slopes are several small temples and mountain shrines, many of them built in the Tang and Song dynasties, and still maintained today by tiny monastic communities or devoted laypeople. These temples are not grand architectural marvels, but rather modest sanctuaries, made from stone, wood, and ceramic tiles, often hugging the edge of the forest or sitting quietly by a stream. One such example is Yunfeng Temple, an ancient Taoist retreat nestled halfway up the mountain ridge. Tucked into a clearing with views over a distant valley, it remains a place of pilgrimage for Taoists and seekers looking for solitude. Its rooftop tiles are stained green with moss, and the incense inside curls skyward in the cold morning air like offerings to the mountain itself. In many parts of Qizishan, the silence is profound, interrupted only by the call of birds, the rustle of unseen wildlife in the underbrush, or the sound of water trickling from one rock to another. These sounds are not disturbances but components of the mountain's heartbeat, pulsing through every forest glade, misted ravine, and weathered shrine. It's a place where the human presence feels minimal, dwarfed by the immense living presence of nature. Even the footprints left on the trails feel as though they will be swallowed by moss before long. The cultural and spiritual significance of Qizishan is deeply tied to the nearby Qiantai tradition of Buddhism, and some scholars argue that many wandering monks passed through Qizishan on their way to Mount Qiantai, home of the Qiantai school's founding temple. These monks left behind stone carvings and inscriptions, some still visible on flat cliff faces or boulders beside old paths. Characters from the Tang dynasty speak of enlightenment, impermanence, or mountain peace. Messages left not as proclamations, but gentle invitations to reflect while wandering. Locals in nearby villages, such as Ziyang and Qizishan, live close to the land, their lives still closely tied to seasonal rhythms, mountain produce, and the stories passed from one generation to the next. They tell of spirits dwelling in fog, of immortals hiding in caves, and of rare herbs found only after the fifth mist of spring. These oral traditions are not framed as fantasy but woven into daily life. Elders will still burn incense and offer tea to small stone guardians along forest paths, ensuring peace with the mountain. One cannot visit Qizishan expecting spectacles. There are no glass skywalks, no tourist buses, no neon-lit night trails. Instead, what it offers is an immersion into a landscape that demands attention in the smallest of details. A spider's web jeweled with morning mist, the crack of bamboo in wind, the quiet resonance of a temple bell. These details don't shout, they wait. And for the hiker, pilgrim, or solitary dreamer who moves slowly and listens deeply, the mountain reveals a world of texture, stillness, and depth. In a time when many mountains are overwhelmed with infrastructure and digital saturation, Qizishan stands as an outpost of quietude, where nature and spirit still meet without spectacle. It is an unreal place precisely because it has refused to become part of the hypervisible world. It remains hidden, hushed, and untouched in the way true sanctuaries always are. Mount Qomolangma, or Huanggangshan, towers as the loftiest peak in southeastern China, nestled within the sprawling and biologically vibrant Wuyi Mountains of northern Fujian province. Standing at approximately 2,158 meters, 7,080 feet, above sea level, it represents not only a geographical high point, but a spiritual and ecological pinnacle as well. Shrouded often in perpetual fog, its slopes draped in dense cloud forests, and its ridges touched by ancient winds, Mount Qomolangma is a place that seems to belong not entirely to the earth, but to a realm somewhere between heaven and mist. The Wuyi Mountains, of which Huanggangshan is the crown jewel, are a UNESCO World Natural and Cultural Heritage Site, a rare dual designation that reflects both their stunning natural richness and their deep historical importance. Huanggangshan is the core of this vast mountain system, rising like a silent sentinel among rolling peaks, sheer cliffs, and plunging river valleys. Its forested flanks are threaded with streams and waterfalls, many of which flow into the Nine-Bend River, Juxi, the waterway that defines the Wuyi landscape. What makes Huanggangshan particularly remarkable is its ecological distinctiveness. The mountain supports one of China's most pristine examples of subtropical cloud forest, a fragile, moisture-laden ecosystem where moss blankets tree trunks, lichens hang from gnarled branches like aged silk, and rare orchids cling to damp rocks. The air is heavy with the scent of wet leaves and earth, and every breath is thick with oxygen and mystery. These forests are often swaddled in mist for weeks at a time, making visibility low but enhancing a sense of being swallowed by the mountain's presence. Among the rich biodiversity of the region, Huanggangshan hosts more than 3,000 species of plants, many of them endemic, and hundreds of species of birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Chinese giant salamanders, clouded leopards, black muntjacs, and rare songbirds can all be found within its protected bounds. It's a place where life thrives in a way that feels ancient and undisturbed, where evolution seems to have moved forward behind a curtain of mist. Walking through the thick forest paths on the mountain slopes feels like entering a world left untouched by time. Camphor trees, spruce, and fir, alongside towering cryptomeria and ancient ginkgo trees, form a green cathedral where the sunlight is diffused into silver. Vines stretch like arteries between trunks, and every rock is slippery with water and age. Because of the constant humidity, moss and fern species dominate, covering nearly every surface with a fuzzy, dreamlike texture. The summit of Mount Qomolangma is rarely visible from afar, a mysterious peak that keeps its crown shrouded in cloud. The trek to the top is difficult and often obscured by weather, but those who do reach it are rewarded not necessarily with sweeping panoramic views, since fog often conceals the landscape, but with an overwhelming sense of solitude and elevation, a spiritual climax that does not depend on visual drama but on emotional stillness. This summit is not a tourist trap but a sacred pause at the top of the world, where every gust of wind feels like a whisper from something older than civilization. Huanggangshan has also long been a mountain of philosophical and spiritual reverence. The surrounding Wuyi region was once a haven for Taoist alchemists, Buddhist hermits, and Neo-Confucian scholars, especially during the Song and Ming dynasties. The great Neo-Confucian philosopher Zhuxi lived and taught in the Wuyi area, and his influence is still felt in the quiet study halls and temples nestled throughout the lower ridges. Though Huanggangshan itself has few temples at its summit, it is spiritually significant as the source and protector of the sacred landscape below. From the lower valleys leading into the mountain, especially near Huaishan city, travelers can follow ancient footpaths through the Wui range that eventually wind their way toward Huanggangshan. Along the way, they pass through tea plantations, which produce the world-famous Da Hong Pao, big red robe, oolong tea, grown in the mineral-rich soil and mist-laced microclimates of these slopes. In this sense, Huanggangshan not only guards the forests and clouds, but also nurtures a living cultural economy, linking ecology with the rhythm of human hands harvesting leaves at dawn. Because of its remote location and ecological sensitivity, Huanggangshan is strictly protected under Chinese environmental law. Much of the summit area lies within a nature reserve that restricts casual hiking and requires permits for scientific and conservation activity. This has preserved the mountain from overdevelopment and allowed its flora and fauna to thrive unmolested, a rarity in a country where tourism can often outpace preservation. Myths abound on the mountain, particularly among older communities in Fujian and neighboring Jiangxi. It is said that immortals still walk the fog paths of Huanggangshan, that spirit animals inhabit the high springs, and that herbs with miraculous healing properties grow only on its upper cliffs, blooming once every 10 years. Elders speak of disappearing caves that lead to entire kingdoms inside the mountain, hidden from the eyes of the impatient. Mount Huanggang represents not just a geographical high point, but a philosophical one, a reminder of what it means to reach toward the sky not with conquest in mind, but with reverence, humility, and awe. Its fog-shrouded crown, its breathless forests, and its spectral presence make it an unreal place not because it is invented, but because it remains untouched by the falseness of invention. It is real, yet feels imagined, present, yet dreamlike. In an age where summits are often marked with flags and social media posts, Huanggangshan waits in silence, veiled, remote, whispering to those who seek the kind of elevation that can't be measured in meters alone. Mount Longhu, Dragon Tiger Mountain, rises in the heart of Jiangxi province like a page torn from a celestial fable, where mythology, natural grandeur, and spiritual depth converge in one breathtaking tableau. As its name suggests, the mountain is imbued with duality and balance, dragon and tiger, yin and yang, heaven and earth, all made manifest through the red cliffs, winding rivers, and mystical caves that define this remarkable Taoist sanctuary. At first glance, Mount Longhu's most striking features are its massive ochre and crimson sandstone cliffs, carved over millennia by the hands of wind, water, and time. These vertical walls loom over the Luxai River, which coils like a jade serpent at the mountain's feet, slicing elegantly through valleys and beneath rock arches. The river's still surface often reflects the sky so perfectly that it seems like a mirror laid down by the immortals themselves. As morning fog clings to the ridgelines and soft light ignites the red walls, the landscape feels wholly unreal, a living scroll painting come to life. But beyond the scenery, Mount Longhu is known foremost as one of the most sacred Taoist mountains in all of China, widely believed to be the cradle of Taoism itself. It was here, over 2,000 years ago, that Zhong Daoling, regarded as the founder of Zhengyi Taoism, Orthodox Unity sect, is said to have attained the Tao and established a spiritual lineage that persists to this day. He is believed to have performed alchemical experiments, communicated with deities, and eventually transcended into immortality, an act that elevated Mount Longhu from a scenic marvel into a site of cosmic resonance. The mountain's spiritual significance is literally carved into its cliffs. Hidden among the ridges and gorges are over 60 cliffside tombs, dating back to the Eastern Han Dynasty, 25 to 220 AD. These hanging tombs, lodged high into the face of the red cliffs, remain an archaeological and architectural mystery. How these tombs were constructed, suspended dozens of meters above the valley floor without any obvious path, is still not fully understood. The locals refer to them as the sky tombs, and they are believed to house Taoist immortals or revered sages, their souls still whispering through the wind. Within the mountain itself lie dozens of limestone and sandstone caves, many of them shrouded in legend. The Immortal Cave, Tiger Cave, and Heavenly Master's Cave are only a few of the sacred grottos where Zhong Daoling and his disciples supposedly meditated, practiced internal alchemy, or communicated with celestial beings. The caves are often marked with ancient inscriptions, tablets, and statues, each telling fragments of stories that bind the material and the metaphysical. Perhaps most visually iconic are the rock formations that have lent the mountain its name. According to legend, the shape of the main ridgeline resembles a dragon coiled in slumber, while a neighboring promontory mimics the profile of a tiger watching over the river. This interplay between forms, the natural and the symbolic, defines the mountain's entire atmosphere. Taoist philosophy, rooted in observation of the natural world, finds no better classroom than these shifting clouds, these stone guardians, these waters that mirror the sky. The Shangqing Palace, perched on the slopes, is one of the most revered Taoist temples in the region. Though the original structure has been rebuilt many times over the centuries due to war and weather, it still holds the spiritual authority of a celestial court, its halls filled with incense, golden statues, and the quiet chanting of priests who trace their spiritual lineage directly to the heavenly masters. Pilgrims climb long stone stairways bordered by pines to reach its gates, where they offer prayers not just for blessings, but for clarity, balance, and the wisdom of the Tao. Every year, during important Taoist festivals, Mount Qomolangma becomes a stage for ceremonies that blur the line between performance and divine invocation. Ritual dances, chants, and offerings are made by robed Taoist priests with long beards and calm expressions. Visitors who witness these ceremonies often speak of a strange stillness that settles in the heart, as if time slows and the veil between worlds thins. But even outside of its religious significance, the mountain offers surreal natural experiences. The Luxai River winds through the scenic area like a ribbon of jade, and small wooden boats guided by local boatmen offer a serene way to explore the cliffs and caves from below. The gentle current, the distant flutes of unseen birds, and the shadows of red cliffs reflected in the water create a journey that feels less like travel and more like dream-walking. In spring and autumn, the forests that cling to the mountain slopes come alive with color. Misty greens, fiery maples, and bamboo thickets that sway with grace. Many trails cross the mountain, including narrow stone paths where every step seems steeped in sacred history. One can spend days hiking from temple to tomb to cave, each location a portal into a world that exists both within and beyond the senses. The region surrounding Mount Qomolangma has also embraced its legacy. Nearby villages still uphold ancient Taoist practices, including traditional herbal medicine, martial arts like Tai Chi and Qigong, and divination rituals. It is not uncommon to meet elders who can read the Book of Changes, I Ching, with unnerving insight or tell tales of hidden immortals who still roam the mountain in secret. Despite its mythical atmosphere, Mount Qomolangma is remarkably accessible compared to other sacred Chinese peaks. Yet, unlike more heavily commercialized sites, it has managed to retain an air of authentic mysticism, perhaps because it never needed embellishment. The mountain, river, sky, and stone already speak in the language of the eternal. In a country bursting with natural wonders and spiritual landmarks, Mount Qomolangma stands alone in its fusion of myth and geography. It is a place where the soul of Taoism still breathes, where the spirits of dragons and tigers guard the gateways, and where cliff tombs watch silently over a river that never stops flowing. To visit Mount Qomolangma is to walk not just through space, but through layers of belief, history, and elemental beauty. A place unreal not because it defies explanation, but because it fulfills something we've always longed for but rarely find, a harmony between earth and sky, between the sacred and the seen. Mount Qizishan, or Great Green Mountain, stretches like a sleeping beast across the rugged northern lands of Inner Mongolia, offering a vision of wilderness seldom associated with China's better-known landscapes. Rising from the flat, windswept steppes that stretch endlessly toward the Gobi, Qizishan is less a singular mountain than a series of bold, forested ridges, canyons, and granite uplands, carved by time and crowned with sweeping, sunlit plateaus. It is a region where the elemental forces of nature seem especially close, where stone, sky, wind, and wildness speak in unbroken chorus. Unlike the towering Himalayan ranges or the sacred Buddhist peaks of the east, Qizishan is not defined by vertical extremity, but by horizontal vastness, a geological backbone that runs from Ulaanbaatar to Hohhot, serving both as a natural boundary and a cultural bridge between Han Chinese civilizations and the ancient Mongol tribes who have long roamed these lands. In essence, Mount Qomolangma is where the edge of the forest meets the beginning of the steppe, and its terrain reflects this elemental threshold. At its core, the mountain is made up of Precambrian rock, among the oldest on the Asian continent. Granite and gneiss domes, weathered over millions of years, emerge like the vertebrae of some primordial creature. Their surfaces are painted with lichen and moss, occasionally streaked with red iron-rich deposits that glow at sunset. The mountain summits are not spires, but rounded ridges, often crowned with sparse conifer trees that bend and twist under the pressure of constant wind. In many places, those winds howl unchecked, pulling at the coats of mountain goats and the feathers of hawks that glide on invisible thermals. Beneath these ridges lie valleys fed by seasonal rivers, many of which are dry much of the year, but in spring become veins of motion, spilling meltwater from winter's snow into the grasslands below. These rivers often form deep gorges, such as the Shaohuangshui Canyon, with narrow, shadowed passageways, cold stone walls, and hidden grottos where snow can linger well into the warmer months. In these protected crevices, flora thrives: wild rhododendron, birch groves, and high-altitude medicinal herbs, many of which are harvested by locals for traditional Inner Mongolian medicine. Culturally, Mount Qomolangma holds profound significance. It is deeply revered among Mongolian communities, who regard the mountain not just as a landmark, but as a guardian spirit of the land. Traditional Mongolian Ovu shrines, piles of sacred stones and blue kata scarves, can be found at the passes and peaks, marking places of worship where herders stop to offer thanks or seek protection during journeys. Travelers who come across these sites are expected to circle them clockwise 3 times, adding a stone of their own, and perhaps whispering a wish into the wind. One of the most storied locations within Qizishan is Tuzu Mountain, a prominent ridgeline near Hohhot, known both for its stunning natural formations and its historical legacy. During the reign of Genghis Khan, the region was a favored route for seasonal migrations, and later, parts of the Great Wall's northern extensions were built near the southern flanks of the range, using the mountains as both shield and surveillance post. Indeed, traces of ancient watchtowers, crumbling stone ramparts, and battlements can still be found along certain ridges, lonely silhouettes against the vast sky. Modern exploration of the region has revealed a surprisingly rich biodiversity for what appears, at first glance, to be an arid mountain. Siberian roe deer, Eurasian lynx, golden eagles, and even snow leopards, though exceedingly rare, have been recorded in the deeper forests and rocky folds of the Qizishan area. It is also a haven for birdwatchers, as dozens of species, both resident and migratory, nest or pass through the ridgelines. In spring, the air is filled with the echoing calls of cranes and hawks, and in the lower elevations, wildflowers blanket the meadows in bursts of lavender, yellow, and violet. One of the mountain's greatest surprises is its accessibility from Hohhot, the capital of Inner Mongolia. Just a short drive from the city lies Qomolangma Mountain Scenic Area, a well-managed section of the broader range featuring wooden boardwalks, cliffside temples, and glass skywalks that offer dizzying views of the plains below. But wander beyond the designated paths, and you will find yourself quickly engulfed in rugged wilderness, where nomadic encampments stilled at the high pastures and the scent of fermented mare's milk and wood smoke linger on the wind. Seasonal changes here are extreme. Summers are mild, filled with the hum of insects and the rustle of dry grass, while winters can be brutal. Temperatures plunging far below freezing, snow whitening the uplands, and clouds rolling in like curtains drawn across the stage of the world. During autumn, the forests explode in color, contrasting sharply against the golden grasslands and cobalt sky. Each season renders the mountain anew, as if it were a different place with the same soul. There's also a spiritual quietude that permeates the region. While it may not house the grand temples of Mount Qomolangma or the sacred caves of Longhu, Qizishan offers something just as profound, a sense of infinite space, of unbounded sky and time-worn earth. Here, in the stillness between ridgelines, you feel not small, but elemental, part of the same story that shaped the granite, fed the trees, and carried the herders across the steppe for centuries. In recent years, ecotourism has begun to take root, but the mountain still resists being tamed. There is a raw integrity to Qizishan, an honesty of landscape that does not seek to impress with theatrical grandeur, but rather moves the soul with its openness, its silence, and its steady breath. It is a place that rewards not conquest but humility, a place that offers not just views, but perspective. Mount Qomolangma stands as a monument not only to geology, but to the interplay of cultures, ecosystems, and deep time. It is a reminder that beauty in China is not confined to mist-draped pagodas or soaring cast towers, but also lives in the undulating shadows of grassland ridges, in the whispers of wind over ancient stones, and in the sacred stillness that only wide-open spaces can provide. Mount Qomolangma, or Qomolangma Snow Mountain, rises like a white guardian between the provinces of Yunnan and the edge of the Tibetan Plateau, cloaked in mystery, reverence, and cloud. Its name, meaning White Horse Snow Mountain, is not merely poetic, it is embedded in the spiritual fabric of the land. Among the most sacred peaks to Tibetan Buddhists and a biological jewel in China's highland ecosystems, Baima stands as both a spiritual beacon and a fortress of alpine life. Towering at an elevation of 5,430 meters, 17,815 feet, Mount Baima is the highest peak in the Hengduan Mountains, a critical biocorridor that links the Tibetan plateau with the lush valleys of Yunnan. What makes this mountain profoundly unique is not only its elevation or isolation, but the way it hosts four distinct ecosystems, stacked one upon the other in vertical harmony, from broadleaf forest at its base, to subalpine coniferous zones, then alpine scrublands, and finally, permanent snow and glacier above the tree line. Few places on Earth contain such condensed ecological drama within a single range. The mountain lies within the boundaries of the three parallel rivers of Yunnan Protected Area, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most biodiverse temperate ecosystems on the planet. Here, the Yangtze, Jinsho, Mekong, Lancang, and Salween, Nujiang, rivers cut through immense gorges, and the peaks rise sharply between them like a stone spine separating worlds. Baima Snow Mountain dominates this region, straddling the deep trench of the Mekong River to the west and the rolling valleys to the east. But despite its geographical prominence, Baima remains astonishingly remote. Access to the area is limited, and even today, there are few roads. Tibetan villages, often reachable only by foot or mule track, are scattered on the lower flanks of the mountain. These settlements, some no more than clusters of stone houses and prayer flags, live in ritual symbiosis with the mountain, observing seasonal festivals, sky burials, and pilgrimage routes that weave along ancient paths and glacial lakes. To these communities, Baima is not simply a mountain, it is a living deity. Its peaks are considered so sacred that climbing to the summit is taboo, forbidden out of respect for the mountain spirits. This reverence has preserved the region's wildness in ways that even modern conservation policies struggle to emulate. As a result, Baima Snow Mountain remains a sanctuary for rare and endangered species, many of which are found nowhere else on Earth. Most famously, the mountain is one of the last refuges of the Yunnan snub-nosed monkey, Rhinopithecus beati, an ethereal primate with ghost-pale fur, deep-set black eyes, and upturned nostrils, adapted to survive in snow-covered forests at altitudes that would be lethal to most mammals. This monkey, once thought extinct, lives in small troops deep in the mountain's shadowed conifer belts, feeding on lichen and moving with near-mythical elusiveness. In addition to the snub-nosed monkey, Baima shelters musk deer, tarkeen, clouded leopards, and a dazzling array of birds and insects, many of which are endemic. The plant life is equally remarkable. Blue poppies, alpine azaleas, rhododendrons, and lichen-draped fir trees dominate various elevation zones. During the spring thaw, the slopes erupt in color as flowers bloom in riotous waves across the high meadows. These biological riches have drawn biologists from around the world, yet the mountain still defies complete understanding. One of the most iconic features of the range is the Baima Snow Mountain National Nature Reserve, covering over 180,000 hectares of untouched alpine territory. It serves not only as a safe haven for flora and fauna, but also as a natural climate stabilizer. The range's glacier feed tributaries of the Mekong and Salween rivers, which in turn support tens of millions of people downstream across China and Southeast Asia. As such, Baima is not just a sacred peak, but a literal lifeline for entire civilizations. Though difficult to reach, some travelers do venture into the folds of Baima. Pilgrims and trekkers often come via Daqing County, a remote outpost that acts as a gateway to the higher elevations. From there, narrow roads coil upward through valleys etched with centuries-old footpaths. The Dongjilan Monastery, one of the region's major religious centers, lies along the route and serves both as a spiritual and cultural landmark. With chanting monks, colorful prayer wheels, and incense smoke curling into the high-altitude air, it stands in striking contrast to the immense silence of the mountains behind it. Unlike other scenic mountains that draw crowds for their visual drama, Baima repels mass tourism by its very nature. Its conditions are harsh, its paths uncertain, and its altitudes punishing to the unacclimated. Yet, those who do make the journey are rewarded with a kind of otherworldly serenity, an emotional geography as powerful as the physical one. To stand before the peak, wrapped in clouds and snow, is to feel time stretching backward, to the age of glacier, shamans, and ancestral spirits. In Tibetan cosmology, certain mountains are believed to be the dwelling places of gods, and Baima, unspoiled and forbidding, is considered one such place. Pilgrimage paths that skirt its flanks are not undertaken for exercise or recreation, but as acts of purification. It is said that walking these routes, sometimes over dozens of kilometers in high altitude, cleanses lifetimes of karma. Along the way, many stones, engraved with Buddhist prayers, dot the trails, and colorful prayer flags flutter in wind that seems older than language. Baima's sacredness has also shielded it from much of the environmental degradation that affects more accessible ranges. While climate change has begun to nibble at its glacier and affect seasonal weather patterns, the human footprint remains faint. In the age of environmental crisis, Baima serves as a rare, living archive of what alpine wilderness once was, and could still be, if fiercely protected. The interplay of elements here is primal: stone, snow, forest, mist, spirit. Baima is not a place to conquer or to photograph and forget. It is a place to kneel before, to breathe with, and to listen to, an altar of snow to which the clouds themselves seem to pray. This video is for educational or entertainment purposes only, and information provided in the video may be incorrect. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel and like the video.